Good evening and welcome to the May 23rd meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals, and sorry for the slightly late start. We were accommodating a few more seats up front. Happy that everyone could be situated. And if anyone's hanging out just outside of the room, please feel free to come in. We'll be calling this meeting to order and first ask the public to please silence their cell phones. I'll introduce the board at this time. To my right and your far left is Jerry Patamas, who is a full voting member of the board. My name is T.J. Hurry. I am the chairman of the board. To my left is Ed Van Kuren, who is a full voting member, followed by Bob Dugan, who is a full voting member as well. To his left is Mary Berry, who is our new associate. Welcome, Mary. Also with us tonight is Noreen Stockman, who is our zoning administrator, and Joe Robbins, who is our recording secretary. The Zoning Board of Appeals is charged with applying the zoning bylaws for the town of Falmouth and considers requests for special permits, variances, and appeals as provided in the bylaws, which have been approved by town meeting and the Attorney General's office for the Commonwealth. All decisions are made through the public hearing process. Our goal is to hear testimony from the applicants and the public, and also to allow a full and fair discussion of the project prior to rendering a decision. To begin each hearing, the clerk will read the public announcement of the hearing and then present any pertinent information from the files, such as referrals from town departments and summarizing correspondences to and from the board. The applicant or the applicant's representative will then have 15 minutes to make a presentation, and then time may be extended by vote of the board. The board will then ask questions to the applicant, and then the public will be invited to comment. Public comment should be directed only at the project, and we please ask you to refrain from making any personal or derogatory statements, but such comments can include an opinion in favor or in opposition, or it just might simply be a question about the nature of the project. The chair will limit discussion in the interest of time in the event that comments become repetitive. All members of the public wishing to speak should wait to be recognized by the chair and should come to the podium to our right here. We also ask that you please state your name and address for the record. The board then may continue or close the hearing. When the board is satisfied that enough information has been presented by testimony in the file to make a decision, by motion and vote of the board, the hearing will be closed. In the alternative, we may continue the hearing to a future date and time certain. After the hearing is closed, no more testimony may be taken. As for board discussion and decisions, the board may then further discuss the project among ourselves, and a motion to deny or approve will be made and voted upon. The motion will include a summary of key findings and conditions. An affirmative vote of 4 members, which is a supermajority, is required for approvals of motions on special permits, variances, and appeals. A split vote, such as a 3-2 vote, is a failure to carry and would result in denial of the project. Under Massachusetts general law, if a special permit is denied, the applicant cannot return to the board for 2 years unless the project is substantially different. And onto the agenda for tonight, we have 3 new hearings, 1 continuation, and we do have a few items on our open meeting list. And if anyone would like to make a motion.
So I would make a motion to take one of the open meeting items out of order. Board administrative approval of 32-19, 225 Main Street, which is to allow the seasonal temporary tent, and this is that annual yearly permit that we review.
Okay, motion was made by Bob. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Just one comment. Do we officially have to open the hearing for Locust Field and then close it? Okay. Not close it, but, you know.
Right. Okay, so as for the board administrative approval, do we have anyone here tonight, Noreen?
Come up to the podium.
I'm Mark Sofone, La Cucina Sumare, and
I'm Cynthia. We've been married for 27 years. You must be nervous.
any questions?
What do you want to do? Quickly.
Put the tent up, like we've have done in the past 12 years.
Anything different from when you, the
No.
previous special permits?
Nope, everything's the same.
I have no question.
Anything else from the board?
No, no questions.
All right.
And if I could, I'd just give you this, I just have it.
Sure. You can give it to Bob. So everything's remaining the same, no changes at all?
I make a motion we approve or accept the administrative change.
Second.
Okay, motion approved by Jerry and second by Ed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Have a good season.
Come to La Cucina.
Mention ZBA and you get 10% off.
All right, so that will bring us back to our regularly scheduled program. We have the new hearings. Application 16-19, Bovier, trustees, 359 Edgewater Drive East in East Falmouth. We'll just have to read everything into the record before you can start.
Okay.
So being all persons deemed affected by the Board of Appeals under Section 11 of Chapter 40A of the Mass General Laws, you're hereby notified that Philippe D. and Eleanor M. Bouvier, trustees of Marlborough, Mass., have applied to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a special permit pursuant to Sections 240-3C and 240-69E of the Code of Falmouth to construct an attached garage addition exceeding 20% lot coverage by structures on subject property known as 359 Edgewater Drive, East Falmouth, Mass. For referrals, Concom, no comment. Engineering, the comments on drainage, plus additional information will be required to be added to the plans for the driveway permit application. What material will the driveway be? What is the elevation of the proposed garage slab? What are the proposed grades on the expanded driveway? Will it pitch toward the existing stormwater structure? The town will not accept stormwater runoff from the site onto town rights-of-way. Is the existing stormwater structure in the driveway capable of mitigating for the increased runoff from the expanded driveway? We request that the board either require the applicant to obtain an approved driveway permit from the engineer division prior to closing the hearing for the special permit, or that the board include the following condition if the special permit is approved. The applicant shall obtain an approved driveway permit and post any required bond with the engineering division prior to start of construction. The applicant shall complete the work as approved by the engineering division in the driveway permit. We also recommend the board add conditions that require the addition of dry wells, rain garden, or other stormwater measures. Fire department, no comment. Assessors, no comment. Water, no comment. Planning, no comment. There was a comment by Health, but they have satisfied his questions. That's it.
That does it for comments?
That
All
does it.
right. And for the applicant?
My name is Beth Frawley. I am representing the owner on the project, and so the owner is seeking to add a garage to an existing dwelling, and it'll be an attached garage. It sounds like the biggest concerns are with drainage. Currently, there's an existing asphalt driveway, and the owner is willing to remove that, and we would be happy to meet any of the requirements for, to address the drainage concerns.
Anything else?
I don't know at this
Alright.
point, unless you have some questions.
Sure, we'll turn it to board questions, see if anyone has anything. Jerry, do you want to start?
Didn't have a chance. You did not have to go to the wetlands.
It was reviewed with conservation, and they approved it with no comment.
So it's an NOI issue, I guess.
It is it's in the flood zone.
No, it's,
But-
you're not, okay. The other thing is, you don't have to say yes or no, we'll debate it later, if we debate it. Any desire to keep the shed, you're putting a two-car garage.
I believe that the owner would like to keep the shed if possible.
Okay, thank you.
Ed, any questions?
No.
Bob?
No, just the, on the increased lot coverage. It's going up to what, 22.9, is that correct?
22.9, that's correct.
That's the only question I have.
Mary, any questions? Will the proposed garage be built on a concrete slab?
Yes,
All right, so there's no basement proposed or anything like that?
that's correct, yeah.
No habitable space being created?
No. No, the plan is to have a pull-down stair in the garage so that there can be storage above the main floor, but no living space.
Storage above?
Yeah.
Okay. And with regard to the engineering comments, I know you said you'd be happy to satisfy. Typically, they look for dry wells, if you're amenable to that, to prevent stormwater runoff onto, I believe it would be Edgewater. So you'd be amenable to that, and anything else they might have, the posting the bond, anything else?
No, and as I said, currently there is an asphalt driveway, and if we needed to remove that and make that a more permeable surface so that we can address the runoff, whether it's a, gravel bed and seashells, or they're willing to do that.
Any other questions from the board? Any members of the public have any questions, comments, concerns regarding this project? Sir, if you'd like to make your way up?
Yes,
If you'd like to come to the podium, please.
yes, my name is Lawrence Barrett. I live at 367 Edgewater Drive East. I abut this property. Have no problem whatsoever with this proposal that he has. I'm in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you for coming out tonight. Anyone else, any questions, comments, concerns regarding this project? All right, everyone's here for something else. Back to the board, how would the board like to proceed?
Close the hearing?
Motion to close by Jerry and second by Ed. All those in favor?
Aye.
To approve?
Move to approve by Jerry, okay.
Second.
Second by Bob. Findings.
It's acceptable to the Board of Health. An NOI was issued by Concom. I think that's the proper term, NOI.
I think it is.
Not substantially more detriment to increasing utilization. There'll be no basement under the garage addition.
With wastewater disposal. They've agreed to work with the town engineer to ameliorate runoff.
And the proposed use for the above is storage.
Storage only.
Anything else for findings? And conditions?
Really like the drawings.
Yeah, per plans.
Per revised plans, pending the engineering comment?
Yeah, I think we should add that they asked a condition be put in that the applicant shall obtain a approved driveway permit and post any required bond with the engineering division prior to the start of construction. And they shall complete that work as approved by the engineering division in the driveway permit.
Just meet all the requirements of the engineering.
Right.
Yeah, but that's a specific condition they asked that we put in.
I guess, I don't know, if the condition, if they wanted to go with permeable pavers, if they said they had no objection, but that might be a change to the plan, right? In addition to the drainage.
Yeah, but it would lower the.
No, I just don't want to have to come back, that we're allowing that discretion based on their meeting with the town engineer.
I think that's fair.
And then no habitable space above the garage, storage only.
Have we been including the date of the engineering referral?
It should be, yes.
Yeah.
So all engineering comments in condition as April 11th, 2019 referral.
All right. Does that do it for conditions?
I think so.
Those findings as well? Motion to approve was made by Jerry and second by Bob. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. that brings us to our second application for the night, 17-19, Nicholson, 40 Maple Street, and T-Ticket. And for those of you who might be out the doorway, I see that a few seats opened up. Please feel free to come in.
See Nicholson. Is that Nicholson? So being all persons deemed affected by the Board of Appeals under Section 11 of Chapter 48 of the Mass General Laws, you're hereby notified that Paul Nicholson of Andover, Mass. has applied to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a special permit pursuant to Sections 240-3C, the Code of Falmouth, to remove existing deck and replace with a four-season room on subject property known as 40 Maple Street, T-Ticket, Mass. Concom, no comment. Engineering general comments about dry wells and stopping any runoff on public rights of way. Fire department, no comment. Water department, no comment. Assessors includes lots 98 and 99. Planning, no comment. Health department, property is located in the LPSSA. There is an open tie-in permit from February of 2018. It still needs to be closed out, otherwise no issues on their end.
That from sewer?
And that's it for the sewer, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, okay.
Little Pond Sewer Service Area. That's it.
Anything else?
No.
Okay. And for the applicant tonight?
Hi, yes, my name's Terrence Quinn. I represent Paul Nicholson, the applicant. He's here tonight. We're proposing to remove an existing deck and put a four-season room in its place. Currently, the lot is at 24.8%. When we do all the work that we're going to do, it's going to end up being at 24.75%, so we are decreasing by a slight amount. The homeowner has agreed to put in a dry well system to take care of the additional runoff also.
Okay. Anything else? All right. Board questions. Jerry, do you want to start us off?
No, it's just, the drawings look more like for a house drawing than a garage drawing, but,
This is the sunroom, the,
oh,
on the deck, the existing deck,
oh, okay.
season.
No questions.
Ed, anything?
No, pretty straightforward.
Bob?
No, it's, you're just replacing the current deck anyways,
Exactly.
there's no expansion. Nope.
Larry? Just with regard to the Board of Health comment, I'm sure that you can close out that permit.
I actually spoke with Mr. Nicholson a while ago about that, and we'll speak to him again tonight about it. I know it's something that's supposed to be taken care of the people who did the installation, so.
Sure, it's just one of those things that's
Exactly.
lingers. All right.
Has the property been connected? It's just, they just haven't
Yes,
closed the permit?
yes, yeah, he's all tied in, yeah.
It's a contract.
Any other questions from the board?
No questions.
Any questions, comments, concerns from members of the public regarding this project? All right, seeing none, back to the board. How would the board like to proceed?
Close the hearing?
Second it.
Motion to close by Jerry, second by Ed. All those in favor?
Aye.
And what's next?
Motion to
Condition.
approve?
Motion approved. Second.
All right, I'll give that, Bob made that, and I'll give that to Ed as a second. Findings?
He's
Increases
actually-
utilization of the lot.
He's actually doing a slight decrease in structure coverage.
Ever so slightly. We'll give it to him.
He's replacing the existing deck, they're not expanding. Property is tied into the Little Pond Sewer Service Area. And they will close out their permit. Meets 240-216, not more detrimental.
Anything else for findings? Conditions?
Per plans?
to add that before construction can begin, they must close out the tie-in permit.
That's fair.
And comply with engineering comments on dry wells for drainage.
And that should be a finding that they were amenable to dry wells. All right, anything else?
That's it.
Covers findings and conditions. Motion to approve was made by Bob and second by Ed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, applications 01819. Being all persons deemed affected by the Board of Appeals under Section 11 of Chapter 48 of the Mass General Laws, you are hereby notified that Donald A. DeLinks and Patricia A. Hearn of North Falmouth, Mass. have applied to the Zoning Board of Appeals for modification of special permits 2374 and 25-05 pursuant to Sections 240-3C of the Code of Falmouth to modify the uses to include dog training, pet adoption, and self-service grooming on subject property known as 188 Nathan Ellis Highway, Hatchville, Mass. Engineering has no comments because there's no proposed site work. Health, no comment. Concom, no comment. Water, no comment. Assessors, no comment. Fire department, no comment. And planning, no comment.
For the applicant?
Hi, good evening, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Stephen McKenzie, and I represent Dr. Donald DeLinks and his wife Patricia Ahern. Dr. DeLinks is present with us in the third row. The applicants are the property owners, and they've owned this for quite a period of time, and they're seeking a modification of two existing special permits on this property. One was issued in 1972, and one was second in 2005. In 1972, on appeal number 2374, the board granted a special permit for the construction of a veterinary hospital and a kennel. At that time, the property was located in a light industrial A zoning district, and they were given a special permit. In 1982, the town of Falmouth, through a petitioner's article, which was not by the property owners, voted to change the zoning from light industrial to agricultural AA. This rezoning included the subject property as well as the abutting property owned by Mr. Cavosa and the 31 acres on the southerly side of Route 151. The rezoning, in 2005, in appeal number 2505, this board granted a modification of the original permit under section 240-3 as a pre-existing non-conforming use to allow the construction of a new facility for office spaces, animal grooming, kenneling, medical care, and sales of products related to said use, and the continued use of the animal hospital and the apartment that sits on top of the hospital. About 18 to 20 years ago, Dr. DeLinks sold the animal hospital business to VetCorp, which is a business entity that operates approximately 300 animal hospitals around the country. Dr. DeLinks and his wife retained ownership of the building and the property itself. The lease of the animal hospital is coming to an end, and in June, the animal hospital will be moving to a new location and the building will be vacant. Dr. DeLinks wants to make use of this building and has all of his financing in place to begin his new venture, and files this request to modify the existing special permits. The new business will blend harmoniously with the pet resort that's on the other piece of property. And the proposed new uses will include training, boarding, grooming, pet daycare, office space, retail sales, pet owner washing areas, which are becoming very popular around the country, and working with pet adoption agencies to assist customers with pet adoptions. The pet daycare business is thriving, and the additional pet daycare area in the second building will permit placing smaller dogs away from the larger dogs, which will create a safer environment for the dogs. There are no proposed changes to the exterior of the building. Down the road, we may make some changes on the interior. There's no changes to the site plan, just to make the space more usable inside. We will be bringing in, the plan is 4 self-washing tubs and associated plumbing to allow pet owners to wash their own animals. It's sort of a BYOD, bring your own dog in. And as I said, this ability to self-wash is becoming very, very popular. The reason we're here today is because Section 240-3 says that pre-existing non-conforming structures and uses may be extended, altered, or changed only by a special permit from the Board of Appeals. So we're under that special permit. This board has jurisdiction over us, and we're asking you, on behalf of Dr. Delinks and his wife, to approve this modification of those previous issued special permits. As I say, there's no changes with construction outside. We meet all the zoning requirements under 240-216. We're well under lot coverage. There's no changes in the traffic. The traffic that was offset, in 2005, we submitted a traffic study by Carlson Consulting Associates. The traffic that's going to be offset by the hospital leaving will just be replaced by the new work that's going to be going on in the new building. So there's essentially no changes except for the type of business that's operating within the facility.
Board questions? Jerry, do you want to start us off?
Does this need review by the Board of Health? I have no idea what goes involved with
No.
dog grooming.
No.
Have you checked to see if you need to get a modification to your sewer tie-in permit?
No, we have a, we don't have a sewer tie-in. We have an alternative denitrification system on the property.
So you're on your own.
One of them.
Anything else?
No.
All right. Ed?
Is there any change in the parking requirements?
No.
Based on volume of cars going in and out?
No, the same parking requirements that are there right now for both the pet resort and the hospital will be the same as for this.
That's all.
All right. Bob?
There wasn't anything on the plan actually showing what the interior is. So when you say you're gonna be changing the interior for the expanded business, what actually changes would you be doing in the interior of the
The only
animal hospital?
internal changes that may come down the road, and that we have to consult with some structural engineers, since there is an apartment above it, is to see whether or not we can open up a couple of walls to make the retail area a little more user-friendly for customers that come in. But there'd be no changes to the outside of the building.
So right now in your current permit, it's just boarding and retail sales and training, or?
Right now, there's boarding, grooming, training, daycare, sales. There's been sales there since 1972 in that building, and there were sales approved in 2005 for the other building as well.
How would the pet adoption work? Is that something you do within the building, or is that something where somebody has to come on site and?
Right now, Dr. Delinks is working with an agency on the Vineyard, and they would like to bring dogs over and meet with people and try to set up the adoption. So Dr. Delinks is just trying to assist people who are looking to adopt them.
So in a situation like that with pet adoption, do they actually need any extra spaces on the site, or are they actually doing it within the buildings?
All within the building.
And do you have an idea of hours of operation?
You have to click
If you don't
that down.
mind coming to the podium, sir.
We presently at the Cape Cod Pet Resort open at 7:30 and close at 5:30. We haven't really finalized what hours it might be. It might be similar to that, or we may, it depends on how well business goes and demand, and also summer and winter are two different types of businesses for us. We certainly are very busy in the summer and slow down significantly in the winter, like all Cape Cod businesses. So the hours, I can't give you definite times.
Are the hours the same as they were for the previous permit?
Yeah, they'd be, I think the Animal House will opens at 8 a.m. They go to 8 a.m., and also Tuesday and Thursday, they go until 7 p.m. So
I'll rephrase the question. What hours do you want Monday through Friday, Saturday, and Sundays?
I can't give you a definite answer to that. I would assume I would like to be, excuse me?
We could impose hours if you gave us some suggested hours. You
Okay,
could
it's
always come back.
suggested hours we like to accommodate a lot of our clientele. They go to work at 7 in the morning. We'd probably be opening around 7:30, and then we probably would be closing around 5:30 when people get out of work and they come pick up their animals, both, grooming, boarding, daycare, whatever.
Monday through Sunday?
Yeah, we would probably, particularly with the bring your own dogs for bathing, we'd probably be open on Saturdays and Sundays. Those are the most active days for that type of work.
Okay, thank you.
Just one more question. Would there be would there be any additional exterior kennels?
No,
Yeah.
there's quite a bit of room in the present Falmouth Animal House, so there would be, we may make a little addition with fencing to bring in daycare. We're very active in daycare. Right now, we have, we don't really segregate large and small dogs, and that's something that we're at the point right now where we're having so many dogs. It would behoove me, because of safety issues, to try to separate them. So we would probably be utilizing some additional space in the Falmouth Animal Hospital building for smaller dogs. Just as a safety venture. We sometimes have 50 dogs in daycare. 50 dogs is a lot of dogs, and some of them are very big. And we have very good personnel. We generally have one person per 15 dogs that care for the dogs. But nevertheless, you can have an unruly dog come in on a particular day and just is in a bad attitude and starts picking another dog. So we have to start segregating dogs. This is a safety issue. I'm the guy that's going to get called if there's a dog fight or a dog gets injured, and I do not want to have those types of phone calls. So we try to do very well with this daycare. When I started this 10 years ago, I was lucky if I had 2 or 3 dogs for daycare. Didn't even know what it was. I just happened to make some extra room for storage, and all of a sudden, everyone wanted to bring their dogs in. And so it's a great service. We love the dogs, have a great time, and I think we grow because we do a good job. So.
Do any of your, I don't know how the licenses work, but do any of your licenses required by the town, do they limit the amount of dogs you can keep on site?
No, I have I get a license from the town for kennel license, and the kennel license covers me for the amount of dogs that I do have.
Is there any specific amount that they list on the license?
I think
or
it's
they-
12 and above. I think the kennel license is if you have them over 3, if you have 6, if you have,
But there's no cap, so
there is no cap.
that's all I have.
Could I just clarify, the fencing is gonna be internal, not external?
All right,
It could,
all right,
I don't know if it changed, putting a fence, you have to come back in front of us.
all right.
I hope not, but.
That's a good question. We may have to put a little additional fence in it if we decide we want to bring more dogs in for daycare.
Outside fence.
Outside fencing, not inside, no, outside fencing only. As far as working with adoption agents, we deal with foreverhomerescue.org, we deal with the rescue agent on Martha's Vineyard, and I talk to the people that run the Falmouth Dog Pound. What we'd like to do on weekends is bring in dogs for adoption. And these 3 agencies have requested that, they join us. Also, the Sampson Fund, which is a charity fund further down the Cape, they get money during the summer months with dog washes, various events, to try to get extra money for the Sampson Fund, which gives the money to those individuals who have need for veterinary care, they can't afford the care. So we would hopefully hook up with them also.
Anything else, Paul? Mary, anything? Okay. Any members of the public have any questions, comments, concerns regarding this project? All right, back to the board.
Motion to close the hearing?
Second.
Motion closed by Jerry and second by Ed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to approve?
Is there a second on that?
Second.
All right. Findings.
Consistent with 240-3C. Pre-existing non-conforming, no changes
Okay.
to the exterior.
They're just extending a related current use.
No issues with the Board of Health. And I get a question more for discussion. Would a fence be the building commissioner? Because we normally have a condition, no changes, no matter how minor, have to come back in front of us. So it'd be a question whether we
I
put
think,
that in a finding and then put a condition that they have to come back in front of us to put an exterior fence in.
I think in this case, you might have to consider putting a condition that they'd have to come back, only because if you start doing extra boarding outside and there's any issues with the
Fair enough,
butters.
yeah.
The
So-
the height of the proposed fence might come into play too. That might require another permit from the building department.
So finding would be potential for exterior fencing in the future.
Also, owner has a current license for 12 dogs on a boat.
Maintain the kennel permit, so that could be a condition.
It's too bad Ken's not here. He'd like to hear about the D-Night system, but
I don't know how it
I
relates.
don't think
with-
that exactly has
I
to be
don't
a
know how it
finding.
relates with dog washing, so.
Doesn't matter. I think he'd like to hear
And the
it.
health department said no comment, so.
Anything else for findings? Okay. Conditions?
Maintain the kennel permit.
Okay.
No exterior changes.
Proposed fencing should be submitted to us in accordance with conditions, special permit.
All right. Anything else for conditions?
What about hours?
As recommended, what do you say, 7:30 to 5:30, Sunday through Saturday?
You want to do 7:30 to 6 in case someone's running late for?
He said 7:30 to 5:30.
If you'd like to come back up,
Clarification.
I'm leaning toward giving them 6.
I think 6 is easier.
I don't care, just,
Yeah.
I prefer not to be stating definite hours right now, because I'm really not sure what the hours would be. They'd be within an hour to probably what I said, but I don't want to say, yeah, I'm going to open definitely at 7:30, I'm going to close at 5:30, definitely. I'm not sure about that.
Sure. And
It's-
I think the board's willing to be flexible, willing to give you some leeway there, because where the, at least what I think, where the site's situated, I don't think there's much of a concern of abutters or anything like that.
I'd still like.
They have some kind of hours in
I'd
there.
say 7:30 to 6.
I agree. I'd like hours.
He's not
but-
required to come back in front of us if he sleeps in.
All right.
Or closes early.
It's a special permit. Anything else?
Mr. Chairman, if there was any concern about the neighbors, we only have 2 neighbors. One is Mr. Cabosa, and there's a letter in the file that he's in full support of this. The other neighbor is the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to the north of us, and on the highway. So we only really have 1 neighbor.
All right. Any other conditions then?
No. There's no, there's really no plan, but when they eventually get an interior plan, it'd be nice just to add it to the file. But I can't condition it.
Why do we need it? Why do we care? He submits it, then he changes it, we have to review it again. It's none of our business.
Maybe we should just put in the findings then that the plans submitted don't show any interiors on the suggested building for the additional use.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, 'cause we usually get them.
All right. Anything else? All right, so the motion to approve was made by Jerry and second by Ed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have a bio break. I'm anticipating maybe
Yeah.
a lengthy discussion
Well,
amongst ourselves.
We'll take a 5-minute break. calling the meeting back to order. Welcome back, everyone. And for those of you who are in the hallway, I think there's a few seats available in here if you want to come on in and sit down. Up next, we have application 6-19, Locust Field LLC, 0 Locust Field Road in Hatchville.
If anyone needs to come in, we just can't block the doorway because of the fire code, so if anyone can just step in. Thank you.
There's a chair there.
There's a few more on the far side of the, I don't know, how are we out there? Just can't block the door, that's all. All right, we might all be in here. Okay. And for the applicant tonight? Attorney Moynihan, before you begin, I just wanted to clarify something procedurally, I suppose. Mr. or Dr. Foreman is not here tonight, so that would leave us with 4 voting members. Didn't know if you wanted to.
Yes, I discussed that with Noreen, and I think that he can reserve his right to participate by reviewing the record after the hearing.
And that would be the Mullen rule you're referring to?
Correct. So we'd like to request that, and that's fine.
Okay.
I don't really have anything to offer. I think the hearing was continued so that the board could consider the wealth of information that was in the file. So that was really the reason for the continuance. I filed a letter a week ago in accordance with the board's instructions, which had additional information in it. I take it that all the board members have had an opportunity to review that, as well as whatever other filings there were. So happy to answer any questions. Just as a technical matter, would like to correct the record. We had submitted a plan showing, and a letter stating that 2 of the septic systems proposed for the project were located within the DEP Zone C of contribution, which is the least significant zone, and that plan is in your file. Since that time, Mr. Borselli, who's here and can talk to you further about it if you like, has reviewed that and plotted that line on the site plan, and it turns out that only 1 of those systems is located in the Zone C. And after further review with him, it does appear that the system and the house could be flip-flopped on that lot so that none of the septic systems are in the Zone C. And I can show you that plan if you'd like, or I can just file the hard copy and give it to you to review.
Could you just show the plan, just so
I
we can see
think
what's
we would
allowed in this?
benefit from
Sure.
seeing it.
There's a flash drive in here already, so I'm gonna have to take that out. Thank you. Okay, so this is the plan that I was referring to. You can see on the far right, there's a red line that's running through the last lot, which is Lot 7. So you can see that that is the line of the Zone C of contribution to Long Pond. So again, just to recap, this project is about 3,000 feet from Long Pond. And there are 3 zones of contribution that the DEP designates based on the science that's been developed by the state. Zone A being the most significant, Zone B being moderately significant, and Zone C being least significant to contribution to Long Pond. So this red line represents that small portion of the property on the far right of Lot 7 that is in Zone C. So looking at that further, Mr. Borselli feels that that house could be relocated and basically the system put on the left side of that line so that the entire project is out of any zone of contribution as designated by the DEP. If the board felt that was necessary, we could certainly condition appropriately for that. Any questions about that?
Yeah, I just have a question. If it was flipped on the end, how would that affect the dead end with the driveway relocation?
Mike, do you want to, can Mr. Borselli answer that?
course
And
I can.
I'll just file this.
Mike Borselli, Falmouth Engineering for the record. I'll zoom in on this a little bit. So you see the red line. This blue area would be where the septic is. There's actually sufficient room between the house and the road that we could move the primary septic system over here. We could adjust the building by doing a mirror image of it, so the driveway would come out on the hammerhead instead of here, and everything would fit and meet all the setbacks of Title V, and there'd be nothing within the Zone C. And just to reiterate, there's no prohibitions against septic systems in Zone B or C. So not only are we in the least invasive, their septic systems are allowed, and now we're gonna take it completely out of a zone that doesn't even really come into play with septic systems. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I had a question, if I may.
Sure.
In your letter, you said there will be no flow of gray water to Mayor's Pond from the site. And the groundwater flow is not in the direction of Long Pond and Mayor's Pond. Did you mean septic tank, gray water's, I think it has a special term within the sanitary engineering. Dishwashing and things like that, as opposed to effluent. from
That's what we
septic
meant
tanks.
by gray water.
Just clarification, so, okay.
Yep.
Anything else, Jerry?
No.
All right. Anything else regarding that proposal?
No question?
All right.
I have one question. Did you and the neighbors, and maybe we'll hear from the attorney, come to an agreement as to trying to accommodate a right-of-way through the easement with the town and the utility, either for construction or for permanent right-of-way?
Well, that was raised as a possibility. I believe I said at the last hearing that we would certainly be willing to request that of the town and of the utility to be able to bring that through. I'm not sure it was really something that we would, reach an agreement with the neighbors. We don't have control over it, obviously, but we would certainly be willing to agree to a type of condition that the applicant will make diligent efforts to pursue, that request, and have that put in place. I would think, since this is a town-sponsored project through the Board of Selectmen, that the DPW would be certainly willing to work with us to offer that temporary access easement.
The other question, and I think that it was forefront in my mind, there's been some debate on the height of the fence, not whether there be a fence. Did you and the neighbors ever agree to sharing the cost if they wanted a higher fence, as opposed to, I think you were recommending a 6-foot-high wood fence?
No, we have not reached an agreement, primarily for a number of reasons. There have been a number of requests for additional items for this project that, with those requests in conjunction with 8-foot-high stockade fencing, of the nature that was proposed, the project costs are very significant when you take all of those things together. So, as I said at the last hearing, I thought that the board could certainly make a decision on fencing. We've made a proposal, but the short answer is no. We haven't reached agreement because we don't know what added additional costs there may be, if any.
I guess I meant if they were willing to split the cost with you.
We haven't reached agreement
Okay.
on that.
Just a follow-up question on the fence, just so we know, what is the current proposal on your end for the fence?
The current proposal, do you want to, Mike can zoom in on that for you? I didn't even know you could zoom in.
Trade
You
secret.
learn everything. Bring a 5-year in to teach you.
If you look closely on the two common boundaries at the top of the page and the bottom, you'll see yellow. Originally, the stockade fence was proposed to terminate at the common corner between Lot 1 and 2. We've now modified it to continue behind Lot 2 to the common lot corner between Lot 2 and 3. And on the other side, it's going from Locust Street, from what it was originally proposed, to terminate here between Lot 11 and 12 and continue to a point, so it's in this location between Lot 10 and 11. So the first two lots going in.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Not right now.
I have no other question.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mike.
And Attorney Schultz, are you present? Attorney Schultz? Sir, how are you?
Excellent. Good evening. Michael Schultz on behalf of William and Mary Jane Marston, and Joseph and Carol Bentos. So actually, just addressing that fence, since it was just up there, the original proposal, before we even came to the first hearing, I did reach out to Attorney Moynihan, and my first question, that was the principal concern of my clients all along, and we were seeking the fencing all the way down the property line. And her first proposal was what you're seeing tonight, which is a purported increase from what you saw 2 meetings ago. So we haven't gotten anywhere. We're back to what was originally proposed to my client before we even came to the hearing. So I just wanted to clarify that piece. We did reach out. We were attempting, this is what I do. I'm a land use attorney, a development attorney, represent municipal agencies. In this regard, have done projects mostly in the town of Barnstable. Represent those municipal agencies in litigation from abutters. So knowing what it takes to have standing, what should be the areas to focus on, and what are areas for a reasonable project. Now, I think what I'd like to focus on, at least this evening, is from a legal standpoint, and I think I tried to address it in my last letter to you, which was on May 16th. In that being, the board certainly has the power to condition a special permit. I think that there was some confusion, and I did hear that at the past 2 hearings about whether the board had the power to make such conditions. Under Chapter 40B, the board can grant the application outright when it receives a comprehensive permit. It can grant it with conditions, or it can deny it there are three options. And you as the board, you're looking for a successful project in your town. And so what you're balancing is really the conditions. If you were to grant it outright without any conditions, you would likely face an appeal from an abutter, someone saying, I'm aggrieved, you haven't considered my interests in this particular project. If you grant it with too many conditions, what you do is you risk the appeal from the applicant to the Housing Appeals Court, saying you've rendered my project uneconomical. And so what we've done here, I think over the past two hearings, you've heard from a lot of individuals who have an interest here, those that are direct abutters, those that are in the vicinity, and I think that's been their job, is to highlight the issues for you. What are the concerns when an application comes in? It's not complete from the beginning. It's a work in progress. It's something that you as the board, you're listening to the public comments, you're addressing those comments as you go. I do think that my clients have a particular and cognizable interest from a safety standpoint, from a traffic standpoint, with what we're seeking. And of particular importance is the fence. The houses are very close to the property line, and it's something keeping children, keeping animals. We're in an agricultural zone. My clients have utilized their property for the benefit of that purpose. So I'd like to keep my comments short. I just wanted to highlight what you're able to do under 40B. And in particular, I would request that the comprehensive permit be conditioned for a 6-foot stockade fence along the common boundary line from Locust Field to the common easement area. We've provided two estimates, both of which are roughly half the expense that the developer has quoted to you over the past couple of hearings. So there is evidence that with a 6-foot fence from Locust Field all the way to the common easement area, it would not render the project uneconomical. It would not subject you to an appeal to the Housing Appeals Committee. So for those, I'd like that to be condition 1. Condition 2, I believe Attorney Moynihan had agreed at the last hearing to have no lighting on the back of the homes. That was agreed to by the developer. I'd like to see that carried forward into any potential vote and condition in the comprehensive permit. And then thirdly, dispersing of the affordable units. I think, I don't know who mentioned it at the last hearing, which board member it was, but I thought it was an excellent comment. We're all focused on 3 successive lots all on one side of the road. And I think as a developer's attorney, we want to see those interspersed throughout the development. So I thank you for your time. Thank you for everything, and I'll wrap up.
Thank you, Attorney Schultz. And just to address your second proposed condition regarding no lighting in the back of the house, would you be amenable to any sort of like low-level lighting that would point down, or just no lighting at all? So it's fairly typical to have a light on the back of houses.
Something that would be pointed down, directed, but immediately down, not shining onto the abutter's property.
Thank you. Anything else for Attorney Schultz?
I had a question. Based on what you're saying, you haven't presented any evidence, in my opinion, that would allow us to deny this permit. You've listed some conditions that we'll discuss. The fence, the safety, if it's a traffic safety, I think the other side submitted some traffic information, and this board doesn't control safety, roadway safety, that's the police department. And as regard lighting, I think there was testimony from the abutters that there's been of concern with crime, so I would think lights that come on based on motion at any time is applicable. I recognize that this could be, in my own backyard, wind and everything else sets off these emergency lighting for trespassing. I would think that would be reasonable, in my opinion.
Well, to go back to your initial comment, and I don't think, I'm glad that you brought it up, I don't think that that's been my client's position from the very beginning. I wouldn't say that they wouldn't be upset if you denied it.
The permit?
Correct, which is
We
what
have
you
no
said.
reason to. I'm sorry.
Correct, what you started with, I haven't provided any evidence for you to deny it. And so I want to be very upfront, and I think that we have. We're not requesting a denial. What we're requesting, I think, in my experience as a developer's attorney, is a extremely reasonable request. I think what our role is to raise, and what I think I did do in my letters, are the concerns for you to digest. You're the quasi-judicial body. You're weighing what you hear, what conditions you believe you should impose. So, again, I wouldn't be upset that if you denied it, but we're not requesting that. We want it to be a successful project. And I think to be successful, you do need to have conditions. They need to be reasonable, and they need to be pointed towards something that your zoning bylaw regulates, which is safety, which is traffic, which is the environment. We're looking particularly towards safety.
Another question, since, in my opinion, this would be a reasonable compromise, in my opinion, since you submitted costs that are your costs, not necessarily the developer's costs, that are markedly less than the developer's costs. Would your clients be willing to split the cost of the fence? Therefore, it's not going to impact the affordability of the project because they're you're assuming some cost for the fence for reasons that your client wants, and I've said before, trespassing onto their property, they should, they have a reasonable expectation to expect people not to trespass on their property if there could be harm from animals and horses. I realize that this is a change in the environment, but I think based on land use laws, they should regulate their land to assure the safety of their land and not incur a public nuisance.
I think that
The fence is needed.
I would agree a fence is needed, but what we're talking about here is we're going through a very special process, which is a comprehensive permit. It's a speed-lined process and an increase in density. So this is a little bit different. I would certainly be happy to discuss that with my client. I can take a few minutes, let some other people address the board, and see whether they would be amenable to it. But I do think that it's it is very much a safety issue, and I think that the developer, right, it's their project, they're seeking the increase in density. I think it's truly a benefit to them. They're seeking to sell it at market rates. Really, we're only getting 3 affordable units. So really towards the count, it's not a huge benefit to the town. But, if I can take, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, speak with my clients, and I can address the board in a little bit.
And again, in my opinion, I'm not sure you had to have a ironclad. I mean, it could be something you guys will get together and see if you can agree upon. 'Cause
Sure.
I don't know price for fence, what you propose, what's acceptable to them, what's reasonable. I'm not saying yours is unreasonable, but I'm not paying for the fence. And I've seen quotes go up and down.
Sure. And what I would like is, it's their fence, there will be an association.
They'll maintain it.
That they would maintain it in perpetuity. So it's something that, wouldn't be falling down. Okay. Well, thank you. Any additional questions?
Thank you, Attorney Schultz. Anything else from the board for Attorney Schultz at this time?
No.
Oh, I had one other question.
Yes.
I think it was your clients that implied an adverse nutrient load to drinking. I don't see this in the evidence submitted. In fact, I think based on engineering information submitted, there is probably a negligible impact, if any impact, on the Long Pond or Mayor's Pond. I haven't seen any evidence submitted to date to substantiate the argument that this needs a nutrient management plan and an aggregation plan.
Are you asking if he's that?
He's representing his clients. His clients had raised a question about a nutrient aggregation plan, which is part of a water resource protection district. I think there's adequate information to say that even if it wasn't waived, it's not needed. And I haven't seen any technical information from you or your clients to indicate that it is needed.
We've raised the fact that the proximity, but we have not retained an expert to do so. But that doesn't mean that we don't waive that right down the road if we were to appeal the decision, correct? We would hire an expert, and we would prove just otherwise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Schultz. Is Mr. Rafferty here from the Water Department, sir? How are you?
Thank you.
Good evening.
My name is Stephen Rafferty. I live at 34 King Street. I am the town's water superintendent. I come before you tonight to reinforce my comments on two specific issues. The first issue is the project as proposed shows a water main on the street that dead ends at the Hammerhead end. I asked the question back whether this was a driveway or a road. The response that I got back through Noreen at the time was that this is a road. Any water main installed in a road, whether it's a private road or a town road, will become the property of the water department, and we will maintain it. So therefore, my comments on the water main go directly to the fact that I have an obligation to make sure that the water mains that this town has are designed and constructed to the optimum standards for the benefit of all. I had put a comment in that since the property has a water main both on Gifford Street side as well as the Locust Field side, that the water main should extend across the property to their western boundary with Gifford Street. That would allow us to have water come to this development from two directions, as well as loop water mains, and is a request that is equivalent to requests I've made on any other subdivision or project I've seen in the 5 years I've been in the department, to ensure that we get the best water system in place that we can get. So I would ask you to consider conditioning that they extend the water main to the western boundary. My second one is a little bit more of a comment, and it goes directly to the conversation that has occurred relative to wells and surface water bodies and the zones. The state does have very specific definitions for surface water supplies that they refer to as Zone A, Zone B, and Zone C. And those have been talked about tonight, and there is no disagreement from me based upon the state's delineation for surface water supplies of the zone delineation. Neither is there any disagreement from me on the way the state defines Zone 1s and 2s for wells and their delineation. My issue before you tonight, and I ask you to consider this, is that the state's regulations for surface water bodies are written and predicated on the presumption that a surface water body is fed by a stream and discharges to a stream. And they refer to issues in establishing Zone A, Zone B, and Zone C as the distance to the bank and a certain distance back, with the concept that the overland flow of water to a stream is what gets to the reservoir. We have a situation with Long Pond in which there is no stream in and there is no stream out. All of the water in Long Pond is groundwater. It is an open body of water, and therefore it's classified as a surface water supply. The town, recognizing that fact, spent effort and time a number of years ago delineating where the groundwater comes from that feeds to Long Pond. And that became the town's Water Resource Overlay District. So I will state to you that any conditions inside the Water Resource District in the town's bylaw relative to density or septic or usage are directly attributable to the use of this parcel, since it sits within that Water Resource District. And the groundwater that flows under that property is going to Long Pond and is the source of our major drinking water supply. I understand there's a difference between state regulations and town regulations and what your board may or may not be able to do, but I did want to clarify that There is a very distinct town bylaw. It was based upon study and analysis done at the time, and was a reasonable delineation. This is a parcel that does not sit to the boundary of that delineation, but sits in the middle of that delineation for the resource of the groundwater that flows to Long Pond. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rafferty.
I have a question.
If you don't mind,
I
I'm
didn't get
sure
away.
we have a couple of questions
I didn't get
for
away.
you.
All right, I tried. It's been a long day.
I agree.
So, you said it, but I think the audience has to understand it. It's a local bylaw, not a state bylaw.
Correct.
And would you hazard an educated guess, based on your professional background and your Board of Health experience, what do you think the attenuation is of a secondary treated effluent going through the groundwater, traveling, I don't know if it's 2,000 feet, it has to have some attenuation, probably quite a bit attenuation.
I'm not gonna do conjecture here. I will point
Okay.
out, that the town's bylaw was constructed to mirror, by and large, the state's concerns about development in Zone 2 of wells, because that is protecting the area where groundwater is most likely to flow to a well. And recognizing that the groundwater in this area is flowing to Long Pond, that is the way the local town bylaw was constructed.
Thank you.
Anything else from the board for
Yeah, I
Mr.
just-
Rafferty?
I have a question regarding the, bringing the water line in over the Vineyard Electric easement. What are the criteria that the easement has for bringing in a water line?
I don't have that specific information, but I will point directly to a parcel on Gifford Street called the Resale Store, I believe it is. They brought an 8-inch water line off of Gifford, across the easement, and to their building for water supply and fire protection. So that was within the last 2-year period that they built that facility and constructed that water line.
That's my only question, thank you.
With regard to the water main, Mr. Rafferty, I suppose it matters whether that hammerhead's designated a road or a driveway?
If it's a driveway, if the entire road is a driveway, so that, this is a little bit of semantics, and again, I don't know how this is, but I put a specific question back through Noreen, asking if it was a driveway into the parcel or a roadway, and the response was, I believe through the developer's attorney, that it was a roadway. Therefore, even if it's a private roadway, we will be the owner of record of that water main. We will get a utility easement right for that water main. We will maintain it, and it will be part of the water system. If it's a driveway, it now becomes a private water main. It is not part of the town system. I don't fix it. I don't maintain it. I don't paint the hydrants.
And as the water service is proposed now, would that be substandard according to the water department, or?
The
I
water
believe
main
you use the language
mu-
optimal of
yeah,
going all the way
yeah.
through.
Yeah, we have a description that whenever you're in a certain distance or whatever, and there's water main on both sides that we go through, and they're pretty close, okay? I don't have the exact number in front of me. It might be, Michael might know. Michael, is 220 feet, 230 feet from the hammerhead to the property line on Gifford. Under 300, under 250, right? 220, 230? 2 to 250, yeah.
Thank you. Anything else for Mr. Rafferty? Thank you. Right. See, at this point in time, we can turn it to public comment. With that having been said, we do limit public comment since there's a lot of new faces in here. We limit it to 2 minutes per person. We ask you to give your name and address for the record. Please address the project directly. with any questions, comments, concerns you might have. I will note that this is the third meeting we've had. There's been a lot of information, but again, in the past, a lot of things have been covered. So any public comment tonight should be directed toward the project regarding any new questions, comments, concerns regarding the project. So with that having been said, I will also say we will limit this in the interest of time. But sir, I believe you raised your hand first. If you'd like to come to the podium, please.
It's gonna be short and sweet. It's me, James McLaurin. There's something I have. Now this, I heard that these are not able to turn these in now. I made a copy for everyone on the board. And you'll see what the, so if I can give them to you.
Yes?
You had voted at the last meeting that written submissions had to be made.
I just found that out. But that's up to him.
Well, I don't know what I'm holding yet, so now that
Okay,
now that I'm looking at it, I think it's a previous correspondence that it was not submitted.
Not that I know of.
All right.
But I just wanted.
If I remember correctly, Mr. Chair, it was submitted, but it was submitted after the deadline.
I never
So,
submitted that one, I never
oh, this,
submitted, no.
Noreen, could you speak up as to what we got? You sent a memo out that you got,
I don't
a
think you
petition or
looked at
something?
that one, but,
So there was some documentation that was submitted this week that was after the close of written comments. However, if this gentleman is presenting you with a copy of what he's about to testify to, I would assert that would be different than submitting written testimony.
So he has to read it.
I'm not gonna read that, I'm just gonna read.
You're gonna
a
have to.
little thing.
And just to clarify for everyone, on the last meeting, and to Attorney Moynihan's point, we did close the written record 1 week prior to tonight's meeting, but we left the record open for verbal comment, for lack of a better term, for attorneys on both sides to weigh in, and the public as well. So just with that having been said, so everyone understands, and it's on the record here tonight.
Okay.
Sir, you can address the board.
I'm James J. McGuire, live right down the street in Mears Pond Drive. Last meeting, Mr. Foreman mentioned that he was concerned about marketing for these houses, and then that was never addressed. I have given you a paper that gives us some sales of houses in the area for you to look at. You each have a copy of it. And that's basically the big question. Has that been addressed? The marketing. Are these houses going to sell? You'll have to make up your mind. It's right on the paper by what's been sold. And the realtor also has comments on there about the development for you to read. Again, that came to me through a meeting we had, and I agreed to bring it up at this meeting for you. That's it.
May I ask a question?
Yes, you can.
The relevance of the marketing is a business plan, in my opinion, and it's a risk that's taken on by the developer. It's not up to this board, although we ask questions, in my opinion, it's not up to this board to look at the financial pro forma and say, are the houses too high or too low?
But I was just going on Mr. Foreman's
And I
comment.
was just giving my opinion of
That's
Mr.
fine.
Foreman's comment.
Okay, that's
Typically,
fine.
that is beyond the purview of this board regarding applications
but
like this.
I know Mr. Foreman's not here. I was hoping to see him tonight to address
Hoping
him.
to see him too.
Okay.
No, it's,
That's it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
I have just a point of order
Sure.
question, and for Noreen. So the first letter he submitted is statements he just made. The second one is based on someone else, so is this submittable?
Not as written.
This isn't his
no,
record, but
unless
just this
it's-
one is.
Excuse me. You can, Attorney Moynihan.
Quickly.
Thank you. Generally, I'd like to reserve, comments on a lot of the statements that I've made so far. But just to respond to that, we did file by the deadline last week a fairly lengthy submission from a local real estate agent. We provided comparables showing that the price of these market rate homes is equivalent or even less than some of the comparables in the market. So the board has that information in your file, and we did that specifically in response to Mr. Foreman's request.
So I did have a question just on that, to bring up the referral. So I read the comparables that came through. So my question was, the comparables that seemed to be submitted were all active properties, not solds? And he seemed to also compare condominiums with residential units?
Right, the condominium comparable was actually higher. So we used that one to show, because generally speaking, the detached single-family dwelling, as you well know, might be priced higher, but that one was priced higher. I believe that one of them did go active, and is David here tonight? Yeah, do you want to
So all
comment?
the ones that, yeah, because all the ones that I looked at that were submitted seemed that they were all active, none were actually closed.
Okay, do you want to
So usually
respond to
comparables are
that?
based on closed.
David is here, if you would allow him to respond.
can
David, who wrote
You're
the
talking about Forest Cove?
On all the ones you submitted, it didn't show closing dates on them, it only showed them as actives. So that was my question, it didn't show any that have actually closed as a sale.
Well, I can definitely provide that. We were showing that the market was there for that type of home, that there's other people already listing 3-bedroom, 3-bath with a garage at that same price point.
Was there any reason you didn't submit any solds?
At that time, there was none that were sold at that price within the last 6 months. Of that list, though, there's already some that are under agreement and pending, though. They are already under, and they may have closed by now from that
I won't
time.
go over each one, I just went, usually apples and oranges, and some of them were on acre lots, and some are single family, and some
I
were,
just want to ask for a little bit of decorum. If you're having a private conversation, please take it outside. Thank
you
you.
know, some were stated as far as the letter that they were older homes, so new would be more possible. When you read through, they were actually renovated inside, so I like the idea that they were submitted, I just didn't really see them as
Comparables?
comparables, yeah.
So since that,
The one on Trotting Park is under agreement. That's the one that I sent to you, and that
Okay.
was pretty similar. And agreed, that it's difficult to get it exactly, same lot size, same bedroom count, same square footage. And, I
I
myself.
think that one was on over an acre of land for a single-family house.
Okay.
so, thank you, David. So the point really of submitting that information was just to show, obviously, something similar what's being listed. But the bottom line is that the developer, has looked at the market. Really, this project at that price point would not realistically be proposed if there wasn't a reasonable expectation that those market rate homes were going to sell at that price. And that's the whole point of this project, really, is to try and keep those market rate homes at that range that we've suggested, so they are available and still really affordable in accordance with the Affordable Housing Action Plan, which is part of the action plan, is trying to keep these market rate numbers down. So we feel very confident that at the prices shown, that those houses will sell, that there's not going to be issues with demand.
And I just had one more question, just while you're up there. So there was a discussion about, is this a roadway, is this a drive? Is it a roadway or is it a drive?
Well, it's a subdivision road. It's designed to subdivision standards.
So it will be accepted by the town? then?
It would be accepted by the town, but, since you've asked the question, I mean, you do have in your file, Mr. Rafferty's boss, Ray Jack, has confirmed in writing that the town regulation requiring this water main loop, the measurement is from the end of the proposed main. It's not from the end of the lot line, which is what he has suggested. So the town regulation that's in effect for connection or this loop would not apply even if this was not a 40B project. Given that there is no town regulation that can be imposed here, in my submission, it's not within the purview of the board to create one because it's a 40B project. I don't think that there's discretion there to say, well, we don't have a town regulation on it, but we'd like to do it anyway. And quite frankly, this is one of the issues that's come up along with the fence. When you start looking at a $30,000 additional water main cost, where we don't know where that's gonna end up, it's difficult for the developer to look at, spending another 30 to 40,000, or whatever the number people agree on is, on fencing. But, that information I felt coming in tonight had been clarified by Mr. Jack, that regulation does not apply, that there is no requirement for the water main loop.
I have clarification. I presume that this roadway will be built in accordance with the town's standards in the anticipation of the town could, at some future date, accept it as a public road.
Yes.
Okay, and therefore, it wouldn't be a driveway in that. The houses would be 13, 14, 15, not 13A, 13B, 13C, 13D, which is typical developers do for a driveway, in my opinion.
That's right. It's designed with the intention that it is a subdivision road, that if the homeowners or the developer elects to put it on the public taking, it would be taken as a public way. But the status of it as a subdivision road or a driveway is not determinative of the regulation that requires the water main loop. What's determinative is that the end of the proposed main is 150 feet from the next available connection. Here, we're well over 150 feet from the end of the main. Originally, it was suggested by Mr. Rafferty that regulation applied from the end of the lot, which would bring it within about 80 feet of the Gifford main. But that's not the requirement, and that's been clarified by the DPW director, Mr. Jack, in your file.
Okay, and we'll turn it back to public comment instead of the back and forth, sir.
My name is Thomas Ewa, and I live at 200D Worcester Court. I would just like to voice my support for the project and the affordable housing aspect of it. As somebody who's been down here for 6 years now, fell in love with the girl on Cape Cod and decided to stay. We've been very fortunate with her college degree and my background in the trades to be able to find good work down here. And with all of the great established businesses in the town, our references went a long way to get us apartments. But as our family grew and our bank account also grew, we found a shortage of available housing to be able to stay in the town that we started out in. And as a result, that address that I gave you is only mine until the 15th of next month. I had to move out of town to start a life with my new family where we could afford to be home-wise. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yeah?
Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Martin, and I live Benjamin I Lane over in North Falmouth. I just want to introduce myself to people that don't know me already. I'm born and raised Cape Codder. I'm a science educator for the town of Mashpee for 11 years, and I'm also a realtor. I'd like to think that that brings me kind of a unique perspective on this subject matter. I'm here actually to speak in favor of the proposed 40B Locust Field development. I'm a strong proponent for affordable housing for many reasons. Most importantly, I know how unattainable market rate homeownership has become for young people of Cape Cod. Cape Cod is such a beautiful place to be raised, and I'm extremely worried that the Cape is slowly but surely going to become a secondary or seasonal home location only. We need to come together as a community to support families and young professionals of Cape Cod who are barely scraping by with astronomical housing costs. I think that affordable housing has developed a very negative stigma, and I've seen a lot of things in the newspaper and online, people worried about who's going to be living in the affordable housing. When I'm talking about these needing affordable housing, I'm talking about teachers, CNAs, single parents, as well as the elderly. I've had many friends whom I've graduated Mashpee High School with who've had to move off Cape not only for lack of good-paying jobs, but for lack of affordable housing options. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. I'm used to only speaking to school children, not a room full of adults. Also, as a realtor, I see day in and day out the struggle that young people have at securing housing. Housing costs have skyrocketed in just the past few years. I feel that $300,000 is the new $200,000. $200,000 is either bank-owned and gets sold to a cash investor, or is so decrepit that the work needed is beyond the means of the potential home buyer. Even those with a healthy wage are hard-pressed to afford to buy homes in this market. As a town, we absolutely need to achieve our goal for the minimum allotment of 10% affordable housing to protect what makes Falmouth so wonderful, including our children, our year-round residents, and our working class. If we continue to lose year-rounders, we will see a huge shortage of year-round required workers such as CNAs and home health aides, which are critical in serving our elderly population, especially those hoping to age in place. If we also continue to lose year-round residents, year-round businesses will take a financial hit and may be forced to operate only seasonally. As a science teacher, I absolutely respect wanting to conserve our precious land here on the Cape, and building developments such as this, building more densely, is the only way to avoid the continued overdevelopment of single-family homes, while at the same time creating more units and using less raw land. We need to be smart about our land development and open opportunities for local builders to add to the housing stock while still preserving our precious land. I also feel there is a double standard here in town that as a community, we don't show up to protest huge homes being built or remodeled that will in turn sit empty for 10 months out of the year. The people that I'm here to advocate for today are here with us year-round, contributing to our society and economy, and will be the way that we protect the Cape from becoming something else entirely. In closing, I urge the abutters to reconsider their opposition to the Locust Field development. Thank you for your time and consideration to my opinions.
Thank you, Ms. Martin.
Thank you.
Excuse me. We're holding, please hold your comments until I recognize you. Thank you. Sir?
Hello. I'm nervous, I don't do public speaking. My name is Matt Churchill. I live at 279 Trotting Park Road in T-Ticket. One thing that has not been mentioned is, I should say I have a 3-year-old son, and there is a daycare 3 doors down from where this is proposed. And myself and about 36 other parents drive down that road every morning between 8 and 9. And I feel that that should be a concern about this during construction. The other point I'd like to make is I own the largest privately owned farm by acreage in town. And this thing scares the crap out of me. Density and agriculture don't mix too well. If I were to live next to this, I'd be in constant dispute with my neighbors. And this is an area of town where agriculture is zoned to exist. If we keep allowing these things in this type of zoning, we're going to kill our agriculture. And I think that the trade-off for this project it's not very good. That's what I have to say. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Churchill. Sir?
Good evening. For the record, my name is Robert Leary. I'm Galetta Drive in Hatchville. And I am here as a private citizen and do not speak on behalf of the planning board, which I am a member of. I will also disclose that I have been a construction supervisor for the nonprofit affordable housing organization called Habitat for Humanity of Cape Cod for the past 25 years. I have been an advocate for affordable housing more by my actions than by my words. However, despite my advocacy, I have some concerns about this project going forward. First and foremost is the density proposed for this parcel compared to the parcel where my organization plans to build in East Falmouth. Habitat proposed 14 units, 100%, of which are affordable at 60% AMI on a 5-acre parcel. This board whittled that number down to 10 units or 2 units per acre. This project is proposing 12 units on the 3 buildable acres for a density of 4 units per acre. I find this discrepancy random and arbitrary, as the Habitat parcel could support 32 units if we really want, if you had a developer like Liberty Tree going in on that parcel. To be fair, this project should be allowed the same density as the Barrows Road project, which would be 2 units per acre or 6 units in total. I also object to its location in this particular agricultural zone. The local comprehensive plan calls out agricultural zones as areas in which to avoid densely developed housing, so as not to appear hypocritical given that my organization will be building in an agricultural zone. I've couched my support for my organization's affordable housing project because it is creating 10 affordable units without adding any market rate homes to the town's housing inventory. If this project was to produce 100% affordable units, I would be more than inclined to support it. I have gone on the record with my objections of trying to build our way to the 10% affordable housing stock goal by building single-family homes at a 3-to-1 ratio. This formula will never bring us to the required 10%. This project, when juxtapositioned against the Habitat project, helps illustrate this point. Habitat will build 10 affordable units. This project will build 4 affordable units. Although there will be 14 affordable units in total, only 4 will help reduce the number of affordable units that this town needs due to the 9 market rate homes being built. So the result is only a net gain of 4 affordable units rather than 10. If the goal is to create more affordable housing and meet the 10% goal, we need to build and redevelop in areas that are zoned for higher density projects. We need to create more rental housing, which the housing production plan calls for. 80%, they say, needs to be rental, not home ownership. We need to create more rental housing in areas of town where density can support it. One example is the 4-unit Oddfellows Hall building right here next to Town Hall, which represents a density of 20 units per acre. The 2-unit Habitat for Humanity home on Glenwood Ave represents a home ownership density of 10 units per acre. The Planning Board has been promoting several initiatives to create more housing options through the accessory apartment bylaw and the business redevelopment zone, which allows mixed business and residential uses. We are also working on a multifamily district and the Davis Straits redevelopment. If the town is serious about providing opportunities for affordable housing development, it should be willing to negotiate the transfer of development rights to town-owned parcels where we would prefer more density that is closer to public services and community amenities. The town and the various housing organizations should also explore the opportunities presented by the housing market. With the cost of building new homes, when you add in the cost for land and the infrastructure required for them growing ever more expensive, wouldn't it make more sense to purchase existing homes in existing neighborhoods and help subsidize their affordability for eligible families? I know we just got a grant for $300,000 for Barrows Road, just for infrastructure.
Thank you, Ms. Larry. I hate to cut you off, but you did reach the limit there.
It is like town meeting where I can request another.
Unfortunately not. That was last week.
Okay.
I just had a
Thank you.
question. Did you say this development was gonna have 4 affordable units? This is 3.
Three, rather.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanna make sure you knew it was
Yeah,
less than.
yeah, I misspoke.
Thank you. Ma'am?
My name is Debbie Orbach. I have lived at 474 Locust Field Road for over 30 years. My husband, Tom Campbell, spoke at the last meeting. I would like to address some of the comments made by Attorney Moynihan at the last meeting. First, when presenting her case, Ms. Moynihan used the characterization snob zoning very early on, an assumption that I find to be offensive and untrue. If you've ever actually driven on Locust Field Road, you would see that it is a very eclectic neighborhood. Some of the houses are larger than in the proposed development, some smaller. Certainly, no lots are as dense. I, for one, would appreciate sticking to the facts and not making unfounded statements about the reasons for opposition to this development. Due to the density of the project, there are many concerns that have been addressed tonight, and I know many of my neighbors wish to comment on tonight. One area I wish to address is water quality. This neighborhood is in a DEP-defined Zone 2 area of contribution. The developer, as well as Ms. Moynihan, are certainly aware of this, since in the application to the Zoning Board of Appeals, waivers for Water Resource Protection District of the 80,000 feet set aside and reduction of the 150-foot required frontage are requested. Granting waivers for the Water Resource Protection District for this project is inconsistent with the conservation measures taken over the past 20 years to protect the valuable water resources that serves Falmouth's drinking water supply. And I would just like to go off my letter a little to appreciate the information that we did get from Mr. Rafferty this evening that does support that. Another area I have concern relates to traffic and safety. As many of my neighbors have mentioned, there is a traffic problem on this street. There is heavy traffic going to and from the high school. There is traffic going to and from the Friendship Garden preschool. As well, many people use this road as a shortcut between Brick Hill Road and Gifford Street. Many of these cars are speeding above the posted limit. The proposed development of 12 houses, assuming most families have 2 cars, would add 24 cars to the neighborhood. People often leave their homes more than once a day, especially families with children, bringing children to and from various activities and play dates, as well as going to and from jobs, grocery stores, etc. I have safety concerns about the traffic and speeding and feel that these safety issues need to be treated in a more serious way than Attorney Moynihan suggested, which was calling the police. I believe we need a traffic study to address these safety concerns. At the last meeting...
Sorry to interrupt, ma'am. I do have you at your 2 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you for your
I
comments.
would like to
though.
submit this,
Of course.
this letter, please.
And just to address your concern regarding the term snob zoning, it's not quite a legal term, and I don't think Attorney Moynihan meant it with any disrespect, but that's been a term that's been used since the creation of 40B. Again, I don't want to call it a legal term, but in terms of legislation, they called it anti-snob zoning from the very beginning of 40B. So I just wanted you to know, and anyone else out there, about that sort of term.
Well, if I could just clarify that, it is an offensive term, and that was proposed.
No, and I don't want things to get off the rails here, but I just wanted to put it out there about that term, and I know it does have negative connotations, but it comes out of legislation from years ago. I believe there was a person over here, ma'am?
Thank you. My name is Martha Holgate, and I live at 392 Locust Field Road for the last 6 years. I guess I want to apologize for any redundancy regarding the traffic issue, but I also believe it's a very important issue. Part of my daily schedule is dictated by my dog, with whom I walk without the benefit of a sidewalk daily. In the morning, we go out between 7 and 7:30 in the morning, and we walk north up to Harriet and loop around coming south back on Locust Field Road. The traffic has definitely increased over the years that I've lived there, having become a very popular shortcut to the high school and the Falmouth dump, which is allowing the vehicles to bypass the traffic light at the intersection of Gifford and Brick Kiln. This particular shortcut is very popular during the mornings and the weekends. My concern is one of safety, namely whether or not there's adequate sight distances for the proposed development. Without getting into more of what I wrote for that, to let other people share, my opinion is that there's a serious potential safety issue at this entrance exit of the proposed development. Attorney Moynihan at the last meeting stated that there was a sufficient sight distance. I would like to ask, what are her assurances and how did she come to this conclusion? Is the board satisfied with her conclusion? If not, I urge the board to request the applicant to conduct a traffic study, specifically focusing on sight distance to ensure the safety of all is concerned. Thank you. And I guess I'll submit my letter to you for the record.
Certainly do that. Sir, I believe I saw you back there. Thank you. So I'll get you next. How's that?
Hi, my name is Rich McClone, and I am the father of the developer,
but I'm not going to talk about his glowing building skills or anything like that. I had an apartment that was available last year, and in 3 days, I had 54 people going after one two-bedroom apartment. So what they've said about the lack of housing is totally true. My second point is I have the studio across the street from Kenyon's Market, been there since '85. We have 240B zoned developments, one on either side of my building. And there are no stockade fences. The place is kept immaculate. It's a tribute to the town. Drive down those roads and they're great. There are children down there. There's no problem with the traffic. But also at my home, which is a few doors down, there's another 40B development. So I'm impacted by 3 40Bs. And I haven't seen any of the problems that I've heard tonight. And they're done well. They fit well. And the openness, I think I'd like you to consider on the stockade fence, 6 and 8 foot stockade fences are not the most attractive things in town. And the two neighbors, I guess the two main neighbors have 4 acres each. So I think it would probably look much better if there were not stockade fences. Haven't seen a great-looking compound yet. But thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. McClellan. And I'm sorry, sir, with the other plat on tonight, my apologies.
Frank Caratinudo, 38 Harriet Road. And first I want to say that I have been a strong proponent of affordable housing, and many of my neighbors, all of my neighbors, are in support of affordable housing. It is the density of this project that has us so concerned. As we heard from the gentleman who spoke from Habitat for Humanity, this board had turned down a dense project and reduced the size of the density. So we are not opposed to affordable housing, but having 12 houses with the potential of 24 cars in this location with the sight of distance is a serious safety issue. I come from that road from a different turn, coming from Harriet Road. And I would urge the board to do 2 things before making its decision. 1, visit the site. Please go to the corner and stand there and see what this 3-way intersection looks like at any time of day or night, and see what it's like to walk there, let alone drive there. Secondly, I would strongly urge that the board study a full traffic impact study before making its decision. And I would very respectfully ask you to consider how you will feel if you have not done these things and you vote on behalf of this project to move forward with this project, and there is serious bodily injury or even death as a result of a lack of due diligence. Thank you. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for?
No question.
Thank you. Dan, in the back.
My name is Laura Katanek. I live at 15 Wampum Road. I'm hoping my information is out of date. Mr. Patamas, you had asked if the road in the subdivision would be built to town standards, and Attorney Moynihan said it would. The information that I had heard was that it would not be regulation width, that it would be difficult access if the access was even possible for fire trucks. And I would hope that the board would consider this and ensure that if the town is potentially going to be accepting this road, that it would be built to town regulations for such safety as fire truck access. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Sir, in the back?
My name is Ken Gartner. I live at 456 Locust Field Road. And I just have a lot of concerns about the project, too. We did pass around a petition because I know the project had a petition, and we quickly gathered 150 signatures, and we did include the addresses, because I guess we messed up on that last time. I guess we're too late to do anything with it, though, I'm hearing.
Yes.
Okay, so I take after my son, I'm late with it, okay, sorry.
Your oral testimony says you've got a petition of 150 people against the project.
Okay.
If I heard you correctly.
Yeah, that's correct, and I have it right here, so, there you go, everybody, all right, cool. Okay, anyways, so, just a couple of quick things. And the initial, proposal of the project, one thing that kind of blows my mind is it says the project will protect open space on site and increase the quantity of open space for the town. I can't fathom how building 12 units is going to increase the amount of open space for the town. That confuses me. It also states that the project will use existing public roadways rather than requiring new systems or roadways. And I think we're clearly building a new road here. It does mention too, it says, the project's, the location of housing provides recreational opportunities for the residents, particularly given the close proximity to the high school. That sounds good, but I have 4 boys, and we live very close, and the high school is sort of stretching it. I mean, the time you can use it is very small. I mean, you can't use it during school hours, you can't use it after school hours because of the athletic events, and even weekends are sometimes busy. So that's not quite as rosy as that all sounds, although you can go over there sometimes. In terms of playing pickup soccer games and stuff like that, you really can't use the high school field without permission anyways. So just to point that out, without the discussion about the water line and pipe like that, I did go through the lengthy file, and I know Mr. Rafferty and also the fire department supported the loop going all the way through. So that, the fire department, whoever it was, I don't think they like not going through to Gifford Street as well. I guess that's about all I had, I guess. One other, I don't know how important it is, but in one of the engineering reports, it states that concerning Long Pond, it said that the distance between says here it is, there's significant development between Long Pond and the proposed project. I don't know the significance of this, but I mean, every day I run from my house to Long Pond, and there's no development. You go by the Restore, and you go by Jack and the Beanstalk, and there's one house on Brick Hill Road, and there's a little tiny road called Andy's Way with maybe 4 houses. So I don't think that's significantly developed, but I don't know if that's important or not. And it just seems that with all these waivers this project needs, I mean, concerning frontage and minimum acreage, even the subdivision needs waivers because the dead-end road exceeds the maximum length for the town, I guess. You have to get a waiver for that. You're supposed to be planting trees, and I guess we're not gonna plant trees. Probably there's no room for them because there's too many houses. So it seems like if we need all these waivers.
2 minutes, sir.
Okay, sorry.
No worries, thank you.
But it just seems we're putting a square peg in a round hole, that's all.
Thank you. Sir?
Yeah, hi, my name's Garrett Callahan. I live at 917 East Falmouth Highway, and I work in town, and I have a couple small children, and I would say that the reason that you're having a hard time finding comparables is because, a 3-bedroom, brand-new house with a yard at that price point doesn't exist right now, and I would definitely be a candidate for this neighborhood. And I've been looking online, looking around at houses for the last 6 months, trying to find a house to own with my family so I can stay and work in town. And, it's just few and far between. That's definitely something to consider. That's all I really wanted to say. So thank you.
Thank you.
Password's written on there.
Password's right up on the top there.
It's password, I think.
That's a good one, isn't it?
It's secretive.
Very high end.
We are the homeland.
Yeah.
What do we got here? Movies?
Oh, there he is.
So I just got a couple quick pictures here of some of the staked out.
Do you mind stating your name and address for the record, please?
Adam Enos, 448 Locust Field Road.
Thank you, Mr. Enos.
What's up? Oh, right here. So yeah, these are a few pictures of, proximity of the staked out units to the abutters. In this case, Mr. Marston. You can see here, that orange little speck is the corner of the unit, for lot, unit 3 rather, I believe. So if that's the back of the house, plus 12 feet for a deck, we're talking bare minimum footage between Mr. Marston and the so-called new development. This is from a 25 feet up, as if you were a second story in the new homes. And this is the view of Mr. Marston's house. So all of his privacy, hanging out back for 5 minutes or all day, is gone, riding his horse. This is another one where this is the corner of the unit right here. So 12 feet off of that, I don't know how that, that's got to be 12 feet right there. And that's Mr. Bento's garages that he has. So these people who are going to spend, $450 or whatever it is, they have a great view of some garages. Here's another view from 25 feet up of the same unit. I believe that's unit 10. This is another one right here. This is unit 9, I believe. So the whole idea about the fence, if this is the back of the house right here, right here, and this is Mr. Bento's land, the fact that we're talking about not putting a fence, and I don't even understand how we can even talk about that, because if these people have kids and families, first thing kids are gonna do is beat feet right across, go through the woods, and see what's going on. I'm standing right next to another unit right here. This is 8. This is his driveway. His property line is right here, runs front to back. I had a house that sold directly across the street from me, which is 2-3 houses down from this lot. And it's 4-bedroom, finished basement, 3-bath, almost an acre land, no neighbors around and nice secluded, and it sold for $427. To think that these people, this is the back of unit 10. Well, yeah, 10. Can you imagine how close this is to him? And we're not gonna talk about a fence. Where's the 5-foot buffer zone? There's gonna be no trees, there's gonna be no buffer zone of any sort. So I just find it highly hypocritical here that we're talking about spaciousness when it is clearly, the overdensity of this. This is the view from everybody's backyard, Mr. Bento's house. Where's the privacy? These people bought these homes to live out their days, and now we gotta worry about lights, we gotta worry about cars, we gotta worry about kids, we gotta worry about noise.
And I do have you at your 2 minutes, Mr. Enos.
Already. Great view for $450 grand. Yeah, absolutely. I would like to submit this, if you guys can, work out a flash drive. Just a little front view for you.
I'd like to suggest to the chairman that we've seen it, and not to violate other people's rights, we're not accepting any written or photographic information. We saw the pictures, they're clear to your point, in my opinion. It's the chairman's decision.
Okay.
So on the other information that we accepted tonight, Jerry, just so you know, we've accepted just the letters where they've read stuff into the record,
That's right. But he read all this into the record.
but where this is visual,
Right, not to say this is.
It's up to
I
the
would
board.
think this is similar to the written.
It's up to the board.
I think it's fair to submit representations made tonight.
On what he
Okay.
discussed so far.
Oh, that's a good, good language.
Is it, is that your flash drive, Don?
Is it virus-free?
You got it. How do I stamp this?
Yeah, well,
We'll figure it out.
we'll figure out a way. Ma'am?
Hi, my name is Lucinda Keith, and I live at 94 Lakeshore Drive. I'm a teacher, and so I'm usually talking to little third graders, so this is a little bit different for me. I have been teaching for 41 years. With my salary and the money that I saved, I found it impossible to buy a home here. And so what I had to do was to have a house that I bought in Texas. I sold it 20 years later for double the price. That's the only way I could afford to live here. I used to teach here back in '83. I wanted to come back to teach and to live here. And it was absolutely impossible for me to do. So I am in favor of this, and I apologize if I sound like I'm nervous, and it's half because of the fact that as I'm talking, the people in the audience are shaking their head no at me.
Anyone else, sir?
My name is Richard Augusta. I live at 12 Meadowview Drive. I've been a lifelong town resident. I am in full support of the project on Locust Field. I think it's a shame some of the stuff that I've been hearing up here today. I look at everyone's property. My neighbor's kids run in my yard. I don't yell and complain. The dogs come in. I don't yell and complain. I understand some of the stuff, but I think everyone needs to understand that young families like Tom and Garrett need houses. And 3 lucky families will be very lucky that they got a house built by Mr. McClone and his company. Thank you.
Please. Sir?
My name is Edward McCormick. I live on 35 Mary Emanuel Way in East Falmouth. And to me, the issue is not about affordable housing, it's about density. I fully support all of the statements by people who have come forward tonight. It said that we need housing for young people that don't have high incomes. The question to me is whether this project is too dense for the location. And to that end, a lot of people have been talking about the traffic issue, and I just wonder how the board can make a rational decision about traffic issues without a traffic study. So I would urge you to require a traffic study as part of this process. Now, I know that's an added expense to the developer, but with regard to the fence and with regard to a traffic study, to me, that's the cost of doing business. You can't just come before a board and say, it's a 40B project, I don't have to do anything else to justify it. I think you need to show that the density that is being proposed is safe, and that the requirements as far as the fence are concerned are reasonable or unreasonable. Thank you.
Sir? So we've gone through a lot of public comment tonight. We're hearing some of the same things, and I do appreciate everyone coming and voicing their opinions, but is there anything different, anything new regarding this project? Sir?
Just a short summary. My name's Bill Overholtz, 193 Percival Road. And again, short and sweet. So as we've seen during the last 2 meetings, many legitimate questions about this development have either remained unanswered or inadequately addressed. It's obvious to me that with a 3-to-1 ratio, this development will do little to address the serious issues of affordable housing in town. And if you look at all the reports and whatever, this isn't even the kind of development that the Falmouth Housing Trust is suggesting we need. You can go online and look at those reports if you like. All this will accomplish is to set a precedent for fragmenting the precious agricultural land that we have left. And it's also going to put a dense and inappropriate development in an important water resources protection district. And just on what Mr. Rafferty said, there should be 2 levels of zoning protecting that water resources protection district. It's Zone Ag A, that's 45,000 square feet. Since it's in the district, it's supposed to be 80,000 square foot zoning. The applicant has asked you to waive all that. So basically throw out all the concerns the town had and the zoning that was put in place to protect that district. So really, I think what we're asking for, the community's asking it in lieu of the 150 signatures we have. Maybe that's a narrow community. And certainly the ag community is asking you not to approve this development. And finally, I'll just wrap up by saying, if you look at the number of successful affordable housing projects in Falmouth that Falmouth has completed, and those that are currently in the queue, the town can make a solid case that's making a good faith effort to fulfill the state mandate. And we've made great progress, and it's evident. And if we need to defend that at the state level, we can do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Sir, in the back there?
Evening. Rod Katnack, 15 Wampum Road. Density, of course, is the big item here. And one of the things that I would ask that you guys would take a look at is the safety and concern along this proposed road. With this high density, the driveways are very, very small, and any more than one car, you're going to end up with a car on the street. The street is very narrow. I think that it's a very, very unsafe situation. If you decrease the density, you can have driveways in an appropriate place with enough room for the cars so that they're not on the street, and then we're not going to end up with kids run over. I think it's a very, very serious concern for that street. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sir, in the back there?
I think this is new. Sorry if it's not. This is a visual. It's from the drone.
Can we get your name and address for the record,
Robert
please?
Wing, 15 Harriet Road.
Thank you.
Should I give you copies first?
No.
Just a quick question.
I'm sorry. What is that?
I've got a quick question. This is a drone picture of Mayor's Pond relative to Lokesfield development. Here's a somewhat larger picture, not very large. But here's Mayor's Pond. And here, where this post is the beginning of the Locustfield development. Now, according to the drone measurements, it's 200 feet from Mayor's Pond. According to my own measurements, I live on Mayor's Pond, it's over 30 feet from the pond level to the street level, Locustfield. And that's a decline of approximately 15%. My question is this. At what point does the surface water that presumably goes to Long Pond actually go to Mayor's Pond? Which is a concern because there have been environmental issues on Mayor's Pond. And I don't have an answer for that question, but perhaps the water department does. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
You can have this one too.
Sure. Anyone else wishing to make any comment? Seeing none, Attorney Moynihan?
I'd like to just address some of the comments that have been made. I know it's getting late, I'll try to be quick. I think the most significant issue that people have commented on tonight is density. I've heard the comment that it's an arbitrary density. Mr. Leary talked about projects that have been approved in the past. So we have to keep in mind that as of 2019, we have an approved affordable housing action plan that's been prepared, reviewed by the planning board, approved by the planning board, approved by the Board of Selectmen. That affordable housing action plan sets out the town's goals and priorities for building affordable housing. We have a new guideline, so to speak, now. We're mandated under the plan to meet our targets of producing 74 single-family housing units per year in the first year. I can tell you that right now, as far as I know, Helmus Circle may have been the only project that's been approved. So the density that's recommended in the Affordable Housing Action Plan is 4 units per acre. It's not an arbitrary density. It's specifically set in the plan. And you have all that information in your file. That's where the density comes from. So it's not arbitrary. It's in compliance with what's been adopted by the town and approved by DHCD. It also says in that plan that small cluster-style housing in pocket neighborhoods is to be encouraged, type of infill development. That's what we're looking at, higher density housing, clustered development. That's what we're doing here. One of the neighbors, again, stated that we are in a DEP zone too. I think the board knows by now that we are, in fact, not. As far as the site distances go, the information has been provided in your file. The professional engineer has measured the site distances. They significantly exceed the AASHTO standards. The town engineer has also approved them. Mr. Enos's markings, quite frankly, I'm not sure if those are houses or lot lines. I looked at the plan. One of the lots in particular, the setback seemed greater, but the board can judge for itself. We also know that the required setback is 10 feet in this district. Any house, whether it's a 40B or a non-40B, can be built 10 feet from the lot line. That's what the zoning bylaw allows. So we're not in any way infringing on that. And the density here is in conformity with the standards that we have. So as far as Long Pond goes, I'd like to just take a minute on this. The Water Resource Protection District under the local bylaw is a broad district. It doesn't have, we do not have criteria in our zoning bylaw. We do not have criteria under Title V to define what the standards are to apply in the Water Resource Protection District. All we have is this district that's been imposed on maps. I have given you evidence in the file as to why in 2011 the planning board started the process of recommending to town meeting that the Water Resource Protection District mappings be looked at and more exact science that's been developed by the DEP be used to determine guidelines and impacts for development. So in 2011, the Water Resource Protection District map was amended to exclude the Ashumet Pond and the Fresh Pond areas from the Water Resource Protection District and to bring them into compliance with the DEP zone. At that time, the planning board didn't have enough information to move forward on Long Pond or Coonamessett Pond. But the point is, the town is recognizing that these districts have been placed on maps, but we really have no guidelines to follow on what to do in these districts as far as septic systems go. So what do we have? What we have is the DEP zones of contribution. Those have been developed with more exact science and guidelines and criteria. Here we have a Zone A, a Zone B, and a Zone C. So you have to have some guidance here. For the board has to, look at this and say, okay, it is in a water resource protection district, but we have to look at what are the impacts. We don't have any evidence of adverse impact at all. Just because it's in a water resource protection district does not mean there is adverse impact, and that's the main point here. That's exactly what the board followed in the Gifford Street housing case that was approved last fall. That was 1,500 feet from Long Pond. Since we're not permitted to submit evidence into the record in writing, I'm going to read to you the engineering report that was prepared in that case and submitted to the board and accepted by the board. This was prepared by Mr. Mike McGrath of Holmes and McGrath. The
I'm sorry,
zone,
Attorney Moynihan, what project was that in regard to?
587 Gifford Street, where the board approved 20 units on 1 acre, 1,500 feet from Long Pond in a water resource protection district. And in that case, the evidence was accepted of applying the DEP zones, Zone A, B, and C, to determine if there was going to be any impact on Long Pond. And that's what I'm suggesting to you here, that there's no evidence of any impact on Long Pond, and we have in fact said that we would take the last septic system out of the DEP designated zone. So there it said, he said, in Massachusetts, adjacent to reservoirs, there are no Zone 2s that restrict the discharge of septic effluent. Historically, tests of the waters of reservoirs do not reveal any significant concentrations of dissolved nitrogen. Zone A is the only land restricted under Title V near Long Pond. The Zone C is the furthest extent of the watershed, which causes surface water and or groundwater to drain into a reservoir. The Zone C is the furthest extent of the watershed which causes surface water and or groundwater to drain in a reservoir. So here we are outside of the Zone C, and we can be outside of the Zone C with all of the septic systems. Okay? His opinion is that the impacts of the drainage leaching on the groundwater will not be detectable in Long Pond, and there will be no adverse effects on the waters of Long Pond. Again, that was 1,500 feet from the pond. So this is the guideline that we're suggesting. All we have are these DEP zones, where these zones have been developed, they've been studied, and the state is telling us where the impacts are coming from. And I suggest to you that in the absence of any other evidence, that's what we should be applying in this case to show that there's a lack of adverse impact. So other than that, the traffic issues, I think I've gone over those at length in the written material. We filed the ITE trip generation rates. When you look at traffic studies, you look at peak hour generation to determine impacts. We are significantly under the standard for this development and this particular intersection, and our site distances exceed the AASHTO standards. It's not just a matter of calling the police. The police have a traffic management program in place. If the neighbors have concerns, they can call. There's a designated official who will work with them. And I've even said in my written material, the applicant would be willing to even make that call as part of this project. The police review neighborhoods periodically based on their records to determine what neighborhoods they should be reviewing. And this neighborhood has not been chosen. But that doesn't mean that the neighborhood can't call that traffic management coordinator and get that speed limit enforced, because it does sound like a speeding issue. I've given you all that information. So I think that's everything that I have to say, as far as rebuttal goes. I would like to just point out one other comment, actually, that Attorney Schultz had made, was that there's no benefit to the town from these additional market rate units. Again, if you look at the housing production goals, it talks at length about workforce housing, keeping young people in the community, empty nesters, etc. And lastly, the Falmouth Housing Trust has submitted a letter indicating all of those issues and why this housing development is so important to the community. So obviously you have a lot of people here, and you've heard a lot of people that are opposed to this project. If you look at your file, there's almost as many that are in favor of it. And some of them have come and spoken tonight. They've submitted letters, they've submitted a petition. And I think that's really important, that there are just as many people who want to see this housing. And thank you for the opportunity to comment further.
I have a quick question, only to help speed up our discussion. And this has to do, and I'll explain it because I want the audience to understand the ramifications. If by chance you were agreed to put a road through there, to me, that could be another shortcut for traffic. I'm not saying you would agree, or maybe right now you're saying it's too expensive to extend the road to Gifford Street. But based on the testimony that people are saying, it's very highly trafficked. If we put a condition one way or the other on that, it might, and you could afford to do it. I don't know if the opponents would want that cut through. The other thing is, have you ruled out due to cost extension of the water main if the town can get the appropriate easements?
Well,
And you can get the other easement from utility.
As I've said before, the project budget is very tight. We have a number of costs that have been suggested by the neighbors here. When you start adding all those up, they're not doable collectively. So the water main, we said, is about 30,000. The fencing, 30,000's been provided by the neighbor. We say 40. Okay, we'll meet in the middle. You know, that's 65,000 you're adding right there on the project. Other items that have been suggested, such as denitrification septic systems, which I, again, don't think are warranted or even required by the regulations, that's another, you know, $80,000, $90,000. So when you start adding all these things up, no, they're not doable together.
Thank you. I mean, I just needed for our
And
discussion.
as far as the access goes, I had said that we would try to work with the town on construction, temporary access.
Okay, all right.
Because part of the land is town-owned land, so getting across there.
Thank you.
I just have one question on the, because traffic's been brought up so much tonight. On the traffic numbers that were submitted, do they take into account the effect of creating a three-way intersection?
For the ITE rates?
Yeah, of any issues that would come up because you're now creating a three-way intersection versus just onto a main?
The standard is 25 peak hour trips for study of intersection and mitigation impacts under, that's what the Falmouth Planning Board applies, and that's what the Cape Cod Commission applies. So they look at the ITE trip rates first, and then they determine, and that determines what you study and how far out you go. So my submission is here we don't even get over that first threshold with the trip generation for a 12-unit housing development. But keep in mind that the town engineer did review this intersection with Mr. Borselli. It was looked at. People were out at the site. I was out at the site with the town planner, the DHCD director, the you know, deputy director, the DPW. I mean, officials have been out there, have seen the neighborhood. They've seen the roadway. They've seen the intersection. This is not people ignoring a situation.
They just haven't chimed in, so that's why I was trying to find out.
Well, the town engineer has, and he's given you his referral that everything's satisfactory. That's in your file. But again, that's where you might hear some questions, but we haven't heard that.
Anything else for Attorney Moynihan? Attorney Schultz, have you discussed any possibility of an olive branch?
Actually, that does exist. I'd just like to clarify for the record, I don't like misstatements of quotes. I did not say that there was no benefit to the town. I think what we're looking at is the overall quality of the development, and I think that based on the density and what's being provided, minimal is what I think I said. So just clarifying that for the record. I did speak to my client in response to Mr. Patamus's suggestion about potentially splitting cost. I think that if we were to come to the halfway point, if the developer were to fence past, I think, maybe up to lot 4 on, so if the developer were to agree to fence up to the end of lot 4 and the end of lot 10, I think that my clients might be amenable to doing the remainder of the fencing with the condition that it still remain with the developer in perpetuity. But what might make sense is certainly, again, we started with the olive branch, we're extending it again. There haven't been any concessions by the developer at all. Certainly that does rest with you, but we're again extending that as part of the record.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. What's that? Yeah, how would the board like to proceed, or Attorney Moynihan, I don't know if you want to respond in any way?
Just to respond, if the board is inclined to approve the project as presented without other cost conditions, other than the typical regulatory types of costs, then the developer would be agreeable to that fencing, and to the limits suggested by the attorney.
And that's a fence of 6 feet, 6 foot high.
Stockade.
Stockade, just want to make sure that.
Yeah, so that would be to, the point between lot 4 and lot 5, that lot corner, and lot 10 and 9, correct? Just to be exact, up to here, between 10 and 9, 4 and 5. Yeah. There's 4 and 5, 10 and 9.
But I may suggest, if I can interrupt, which I have.
Yeah.
Obviously, if we go forward and we draft a, regardless of if we draft a positive motion, you'll have an opportunity to refine the conditions in which you can talk to the attorney to make sure the dimensions are right. You know, we don't necessarily have to
Yeah.
hammer it out tonight.
Well, as I said, I can put it on the record that the developer is agreeable to fencing 6 foot high to between 4 and 5 and 9 and 10. On the basis that that there wouldn't be any other cost conditions over and above the regulatory conditions.
Does that include the construction road?
No, because we would not be able to guarantee that anyway.
No, but
We-
okay.
Would
I
have to be a
understand.
voluntary issue.
Okay.
So we'll consider both representations you made on the record.
And then just for Attorney Schultz, so then they would do lot 5 to lot 7. It's a large parcel, and I just don't want someone to be on the hook for a little parcel, so then they would do 5 to 7. And so they would go to, just to the end of lot 7 and lot 8, both neighbors?
I'm sorry.
So on the neighbor's portion, if that's agreeable, the neighbors would just go to the end of lot 7 and then to the end of lot 8.
Correct. Correct.
Thank you.
Make a motion to close the hearing, or should we have discussion before we close it?
So I just have a
Thinking
question
about
on
a
that.
discussion might be appropriate before we close.
I don't have a big issue with closing. My only question is, because Ken is not here tonight and he's gonna be reviewing all the information, if we close it, my question is, can we close it tonight, then he can review and also come in with comments, or do we have to leave it open for him to review?
Can I offer an opinion? He's a board member. He can weigh in on our conditions if we chose to accept it at any time. He's not bound by the no new test. I mean, we can discuss it. We expect him to review it, I would expect Ken to
So my question is if,
modify certain conditions if he didn't like it, so,
but he wouldn't be allowed to ask any questions,
no.
even in writing to anyone once we close.
Well, this is an interesting
I
issue.
mean, if he has a
'cause
question that he wanted to ask the town about something that came up tonight,
Right.
he wouldn't be able to ask that question to the town.
Noreen could ask the question on behalf of the board.
I don't know once it closes.
You can always get clarifying information from regulatory and state.
It's an interesting issue with the Mullen Rule because
We haven't dealt with it before.
we've
and I
never dealt
just-
with it before as a board. So if we were to,
If it allows him to ask questions of entities if he needed to, I
think he
don't
could-
have a problem with closing it, but if it locks him out, if he has a technical question,
I don't have the answer.
I don't have the answer, but I think both the neighbors and the applicant have been through a lot. Yeah, I respect Ken. I think he's gonna have the opportunity to clarify amongst ourselves, all with zoning administrator. And if we propose conditions as a tentative approval, we always go back and forth to the applicant to get clarification of issues. So let's say he had a question of the nitrogen management loading, okay? He could make a comment that he thought that might be needed if we put that in. So I think it's splitting the hair, but I think Ken not being able to ask questions of the neighbors
I'm not
is
asking.
not relevant.
It's not the neighbors, it's any technical question.
Of what type of technical question?
There was testimony tonight from Mr. Rafferty with the town.
That's a local regulation. No matter what he says, whether he's in favor of it or not, we have the ability to waiver it, and we're not bound by it.
So that's my question, what if by chance he wasn't in favor?
He can be not in favor, he could vote against the
Let
project.
me
No.
pause you both
What?
for a second. Attorney Moynihan, do you have an interpretation of the Mullen Rule?
Oh,
Yeah,
thank you.
that'd be
It
great.
might be nice to have a
Before we
legal.
go back and
Well,
forth.
I think the main thing is that there really hasn't been anything new tonight. Everything's in the record. So what Mr. Rafferty was saying is in the record from Mr. Jack. And that if Mr. Foreman, his role as a sitting board member is to review the record and based on what's there. So I don't see why, because a board member is absent, and we've agreed to that, that we should be leaving a hearing open for a board member who's absent. That's prejudicial to the applicant.
I'm sure you can understand our issue, though. This is the first time we've dealt with the Mullen Rule.
But
and-
having the Mullen Rule in place doesn't, it's there so that the board can expedite hearings, not delay them. The fact that the board member isn't able to be here doesn't mean that we should be delaying a hearing to allow the board member to be here. The point is, the board member reviews the videotape, reviews the written record. All of the information is in the written record that was provided this evening. I don't think there's really been anything new. So I would ask that the record be closed and that we move on.
But
And I think that's, I don't think there's a violation of the Mullen Rule, is what I'm saying, because you're closing the hearing.
That's what I was
No.
trying to.
Definitely not.
We're struggling with it as a board because this is the first time, and his level of involvement, not cooperation, thank you.
We've never dealt with it at the
We've
end
never
of a
dealt with
hearing, it's always been in the middle of a hearing.
No, because the point of it is that you do move on and act as you normally would.
Agreed, but just responding to your particular issue, I don't think you're prejudiced, and I don't think the applicant would be. You leave it open, you allow, certainly he's under the Mullen Rule, he can review what happened, and allow him if he has any questions.
I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
I don't think the Mullen Rule prevents him or me, if tomorrow I had a question to ask the zoning administrator to clarify what Ray Jack said, okay? That's just clarification of technical, and I won't say legal issues. So leaving the hearing open, given the extensive comment we have, and some of it emotional, but most of it heartfelt, all of it heartfelt, there is a need to keep the record open, because any board member can get any information he needs because he's a board member, in my opinion.
And I'm offering it just as a conservative point of view. That's my lawyerly side. I'm just offering that.
So are you saying you'd close it but leave the record open?
No, I'm saying I'm closing the hearing. Ken can comment on, and I don't think you want to go through with a suggested positive motion for Noreen to draft something, but we could. Because that gets into the point where Ken now has the ability to look at conditions, whether we're approving it or denying it.
Okay, so that's different, so that.
No, no,
that- so
no,
No, I just, no, I think I understand, and that's what I was going to. We could close the hearing,
Yeah.
but not discuss drafting anything until after. I'm fine with that, I just want the ability of the member that's missing when it comes time to draft something.
Well, okay,
To weigh in.
I'll go back, we could come up with 24 conditions, and I think they could, if we voted to approve it or deny it, we have to, okay. He could still weigh in, because on a project of this magnitude, the draft goes around, okay? And people weigh in, and the zoning administrator gets clarification. So he has the full right to weigh in. It's, I mean, it's, maybe, I would like to at least close the hearing and get a positive motion, but I don't think anybody has the desire to sit through potential conditions.
Certainly can.
You know, you obviously have the right to deliberate at a later time. So you can close the hearing, set a date for deliberation on the decision. And, that's what the 40B regulations allow you to do.
Happy with that.
So as long as you're within the timeline for, the approval, which I think we are. I mean, obviously, so.
So I'm fine with it. I'd make a motion to close the hearing.
I'll second it.
And set a date for deliberation.
All right, so motion to close was made by Bob and second by Jerry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Do we want to send Noreen some of, because that deliberation is gonna be at least an hour of drafting out potential conditions. And it doesn't have to be in favor or against, it just conditions.
Yeah.
Things we know, we're gonna put down, whether it's for denial or approval.
What's available for a date? Do we have a date?
June 20th.
You'd either be looking at June 6 or June 13. June 6 is a little bit tighter time-wise, but potentially you could start on that date and then continue as you need.
That would need at least an hour, you think, for deliberation?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I was suggesting if we get some comments in writing one way or the other.
And you could certainly request for potential conditions to be drafted for that deliberation without making any commitment one way or the other. That has been done. So at least you have something to look at.
Well, Ken has something to look at, too.
So June 6th is the,
June 6 would be the earliest. That meeting's kind of tight schedule-wise.
What else is
13th
on?
would be easier,
13th
but
is-
it's up to you.
13 is only 3 new ones.
That amenable to the,
I'd say we do it the 13th.
to the 13th.
That's fine.
And in the meantime, we could draft potential conditions.
I had a clarifying question. If we draft potential conditions that are readable, do we share them with Attorney Monahan? As a manner of trying to expedite when we have the deliberation, because we may get something wrong.
So we can certainly circulate a draft approximately a week in advance. It would go to both councils.
That's fine, we can go to both councils. That's even better.
So that's fine. So then we'll submit a draft to both councils of potential conditions a week before the June 13th hearing.
Everyone exiting, we still have a hearing underway. You can quietly make a way to the exit, but just do so quietly, please. Thank you. There was a motion?
I think I seconded or I first did, I don't care.
He made a motion, he can.
All right, motion made by Bob, second by Jerry. All those in favor?
Aye.
And should there be a motion then, just procedurally, to direct the zoning administrator to draft potential conditions for deliberation?
There
I think we did.
Okay.
I
That
think
was
it's
included?
That was in the motion, to
That was
draft
Okay, it was
local
in the motion.
conditions.
Thank you. All right,
My God, it must be 1,000 degrees in here.
it's not just me.
Noreen, what happened to the air conditioning?
We do have open meeting agenda items. We have the minutes from April 18th and May 2nd. You got those anyone?
I make a motion, we approve them.
Hold on,
But those are the ones you just sent, right? The minutes?
For May, they were sent out like 2 days ago.
I respond pretty quickly.
Yeah, you did.
Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes from April 18th?
Yes.
Oh, April, yeah.
Does anyone like to make a motion regarding that?
I'll make a motion to accept it.
Motion to approve the minutes of April 18th made by Ed. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Bob. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Regarding the minutes of May 2nd, has everyone had a chance to review them?
I have.
Okay.
Motion to accept May 2nd.
I made some minor clarifications to you in my email about, is that the one on the dome?
May 2nd was, yeah, Woods Hole Partners, Locust Field, Medina, New York.
I thought it was important to recognize that former Secretary of State, who was the ex-chair of the Mass Historical Commission, agreed with the process that some of us might have disagreed with, that they traditionally come in at the end of the process. You know, because we had some questions on, wouldn't it be nice if we knew what the dome was, how the dome was gonna be restored? And they said, we're not gonna keep the dome, we're gonna keep the dome as public property.
I just asked that any private conversation be taken into.
Well, that was the essence of my comment. I mean, it was just that we did get expert testimony from former Secretary Conley as to the process for MHC. And we can leave it at that, so I don't overstep what I thought he said versus other people. Because I know, Bob, you were still concerned about,
No, I just don't know if by just pointing him out versus anyone else, if it weights anything.
I'd be wary of labeling anyone during the public.
I mean, he gave his,
as an
I heard his
expert.
statements and I understand his
Certainly,
background.
well, we are quasi-judicial. As quasi-judicial, we have the ability, if not the responsibility, to recognize individuals as subject matter experts. Like tonight, we heard a number of comments. They were legitimate comments, but they weren't necessarily subject matter experts. Secretary Conley, by virtue of his position, is a subject matter expert, and as a quasi-judicial board, I think it's important for the record to show that he, and we won't say which way, we'll say he spoke for the project and the procedures of the Mass Historical Commission.
I think
But
him
have we
him
done that with
speaking as a
anybody
private
else?
citizen, perhaps with the notation, he's the former Secretary of State of the Commonwealth, is
That-
appropriate. but
That's
not-
fair, okay,
But not labeling him as an expert
okay,
or some sort of expert
okay.
for the,
I
on
agree.
behalf of the project. I know he was speaking in favor of it, but
But he was a private citizen, yeah. okay.
as a private citizen, not as
He said that.
not as an expert for the developer or applicant.
Okay, so we just
So
said
my
he
only
spoke.
question is, it's fine,
That's-
my only
that's okay.
question, my only question is, will this be a new procedure so that on all following, when somebody speaks, we're not adding that into the record? And I don't care if we do or not, but,
Well, he identified himself as such, so I
no, I'm just saying,
don't have a-
when future people identify themselves, should we just use that as a
Well-
procedure that we automatically?
No, I mean, if I understand judicial process, the plaintiff or someone will say, and myself, I'm a registered professional engineer, okay? By definition, I'm an expert, okay? As, you know, not in all forms of engineering. And there's a number of people that falls upon. Now, this is because I had lengthy discussions with others as to, we are a quasi-judicial board. We are or we're not. And since this was a 40B, which is a hearing, which requires us to act as a quasi-judicial board, it could be something we discuss at a future meeting.
Well, by definition, the board is a quasi-judicial board, so no matter what's in front of us, we act as a quasi-judicial.
Well,
board,
I would
Regardless of the application.
I would disagree with that, but I know at least because when I read it, it was for, you know, and I've said it and I respect what you said.
I understand, no, and I
I think we should
understand-
discuss it at.
And,
the
and I,
future
and I
proceeding.
understand that he's an expert, I don't have a problem with pointing out experts in a position, it's just that if somebody else had spoken on the same matter that was an expert in a different way, and we pointed out one person but not the other, I just don't know if it.
Oh, I
And it's,
agree.
like, there was somebody that spoke for an institute that said,
I
they're an
think-
expert on a specific architecture, so.
I think we resolved it, Bob. We're not gonna refer to him as a subject matter expert. We're gonna refer to him as a former Secretary of State that was also chairman of the Mass Historical Commission, period.
No, I understand that, but my question is, would we then do the same thing on somebody that's the head of an institute that spoke as a expert on a specific type of
Let's
architecture?
discuss that at the hearing, at the meeting we're gonna have, so we can get a robust discussion.
Yeah, to see what it goes. I
Yeah.
would just, in
I
this
don't think
case,
an
I would
insti-
rather have the meeting go first and find out how we're gonna handle the
Yes.
procedure than
Yeah.
getting it into the
Yeah.
minutes.
Yeah, I agree, and I think,
It's a good idea though to put it in there as a,
and we can wrestle with who determines they're experts or not.
yeah, and how they submit or.
All right, so regarding the minutes of May 2nd, is that going to be approved as drafted or with Jerry's?
I'd like to, as annotated, that former Secretary of State, Conley, I forget his first name, and as, he was also the chairman of the Mass Historical Commission,
In his
commented.
In his role as the Secretary of State, he does hold that title.
Right, but he was speaking as a private citizen.
Right.
So it's,
Yeah, he emphasized that
yeah.
twice.
All right.
Can I abstain? No. I just know, it's stuck in my head that there was somebody else that said something similar, and I don't have the details in front of me to
But-
review it, but I just think it's adding weight.
It should add weight.
But he's speaking as a private
He
citizen, not
is
as a
speaking as
committee.
an expert. His role, if he was speaking as the Secretary of State,
Well, he wasn't speaking.
No, so my.
he
que-
couldn't
so-
speak.
So my
Speaking as
question
a
is, if
private
somebody
citizen,
else,
Former Secretary.
if somebody
As a
else.
farmer, that's what I
No,
was
so my
saying.
question is, if somebody else at one of those same hearings gave testimony as an expert on a specific subject for that hearing, but we're only pulling out one person, we're not pulling out the
But no
other.
no one identified themselves as an expert.
Yes, they did.
Who?
Cambridge Institute.
The institute, that's my question.
Did they add as an expert?
Yeah, so that's my question. If,
Well, then
I'm
we
just worried
include
about,
Cambridge Institute.
yeah, I just haven't read the minutes, I'm just worried about adding someone.
Well, we
not-
add Cambridge Institute.
Well, they can be identified as a private citizen and
It's the
Yeah,
same way.
institute member as well.
Yeah.
So let's do that, let's do the same thing with the Cambridge Institute.
I mean, they submit a written record, so that gets there anyways. And it carries the weight, because, you know, I don't think he ever submitted anything written.
No, my memory is he spoke as a private
He did.
resident in Woods Hole, but he spoke.
Thank you.
As his,
That's my memory.
as his background, yeah.
Former Cambridge Institute specialist on
Yeah.
historic
Yeah.
Good, thanks for bringing it up.
geodesic domes.
Yeah,
So let's accept the minutes and adding both of the changes to the, correct.
So that motion was made by Bob. Is there a second, Jerry?
Second.
I hear a second. All right.
Could we
All
make it
those
all
in-
one motion?
All those in favor?
Mary, you've done plenty of government, right? So
Did you
you're
get
used
my
to this.
comment enough on your
Yes.
folder? Yeah,
Did I
okay.
hear an aye on it?
Yes,
Aye for everyone?
make it up.
Jerry did. Bob made the motion, Jerry seconded it, at least for the record. We already did number 2, 3 for board updates. Welcome, Mary Berry. Very happy to have you.
Welcome to the fray.
It's usually cooler.
Oh my God, the heat, I don't know, it's the way.
Nothing significant to report on the recodification.
All right.
I mean, it would bore you to tears. I mean,
But Jerry did bring pizza and it was very much appreciated.
Oh, fantastic, Jerry. And I also had the pleasure of meeting the other newest board member, the other associate, Jim Morse, during my day job. So that was fun to meet him, and we're looking to have him on board very soon. Joe, it's your last night with us?
oh, are you gonna come for a libation?
Perhaps.
Oh, you don't wanna say it on TV?
On TV, I can say that on behalf of the board, thank you very much for being with us every Thursday night and
And doing an excellent job.
doing an excellent job with everything with the record.
It's been a pleasure.
And good luck in your future
Bon-
endeavors.
Bon
for-
voyage and good luck in Vermont.
Up in Mudland. Oh, sorry, I mean, Vermont.
So that that does it for board updates from me, unless anyone else has anything? No?
No.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Real quick, discussion date for future workshop. Now that we're at full capacity, we'll wait for Jim to join us and we'll
And Ken?
pick a date.
Sometime in July.
We already got recodification, future agenda items, seeing none. Meeting adjourned.
Hey.